Hey everybody, welcome. Good evening. Another Friday, another episode of Heavy Metallurgy. We're on number 259. Help me, I'm surrounded by two professors this time. Always a pleasure. Of course, Professor Steele. Alan, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're just kind of plowing through the springtime here, doing stuff and things. Back for more fun here on Friday night. Hello to everybody in the chat who's filing in. Got a couple of first-time viewers, folks who have checked out the channel for a while, but are able to join us tonight for the first time, and that's really cool. We're glad you made it. And a lot of the regular folks are filing in too. Hope folks have had a good week. We've got a great guest who has not been on Metallurgy for a minute or two. So we're really glad to have him back tonight.
Chris, Professor Black, Mr. Maycock, however you want to slice it. Welcome back.
However, like you said, however you want to slice it, I'll pick it up eventually. Yeah, good to see you guys. Thanks for having me back.
Oh yeah, anytime. We appreciate you taking some time to hang out.
Refer in conversation to our epic Motorhead catalog jubileum. Was it 4 years ago? I want to say it was in 2022.
You're kidding me. That's the last time you were on?
It was either 22 or 23.
It would have been 22. It was a real early one for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking 22, but
Yep.
you know, that topic, despite those 16 hours that we spent in intense conversation.
War of attrition.
I'm still wearing the shirt.
He hasn't changed since then. What hasn't changed since then either is Motorhead as a conversation piece. And frequently when I find myself in that conversation, I mention that if you want to go track it down on YouTube, there is I think it was I said 16 hours. I think it may have been closer to 18 and a half hours that the three of us discussed from top to bottom, the entire catalog. So hopefully my beating of that drum has netted a few extra clicks in the meantime. But
we appreciate you stumping for it.
Yeah.
Well, aside from a few EPs and live things, it can be the definitive conversation since there hasn't been any new Motorhead, obviously, Lemmy's passing. So
no, unfortunately, it's kind of frozen in time. I mean, there's kind of a steady, I think they have a pretty well managed estate, let's say, legacy brand. And there's a steady stream of live albums and remixes and things like this. Some of which I notice and am interested to buy, and some, pass. And there's no rubric for that. It's a gut thing. Do I, the On Parole remix that just came out?
Yeah.
I don't know if I need that. The Lemmy's 50th birthday on vinyl that just came out. Yeah, I already have 2 different CDs of it, but I'm probably going to pick that up. So it's very arbitrary on my part. I don't have like I said, I don't have a rubric that I'm following. It's just all, how I'm feeling at a particular time.
It's one of those things too. You start seeing bootlegs and live concerts later in his life, and man, those are cool, and I can see diehard collectors digging into that, but it's just, I listen to that stuff and it just makes me sad because he, time caught up with him.
Yeah.
And
it
shows in his voice,
It's very hard to hear. I think there was a later live album by the name of Clean Your Clock, which was from maybe not the very last tour, but certainly one of the last tours. And I bought it, and I got to tell you, and we may have talked about this on the previous episode. I don't honestly remember, but I still haven't listened to it past, I think the first song is Bomber, and as soon as the vocal started, I was like, whoa, no, I can't do this. And I haven't tried it again since. I mean, it looks cool. I'm happy to have it in my collection, but like you said, it's just kind of there's a sadness kind of built into it, especially that very final era.
Yeah.
And I'll admit that sometimes I get a melancholy feeling listening to the older stuff too. You hear it kind of the same always and forever, but then that core gets kind of added to, I think, with with age and with hindsight, and you hear it the way it always was, but then you hear it in a kind of in a new light also, or there's new nuances to the way I hear it now that maybe weren't always there.
I agree, but I could still throw on the classic power trio era, and even Another Perfect Day, and I just listen to that and I'm like, yeah, there really isn't many people that did it better than this era of the band. I mean, it was just so ripping and fun and serious and just dirty rock and roll that I want to hear,
Yeah,
And,
I mean, that's where all the roads lead back to, pretty much, for all the bands that we love that have come along since.
Yeah.
And I think it was Donnie Paycheck from Zeke who's like, yeah, I mean, if that's not the case, then something's really fucked up. So
yeah,
at least that's one thing we can all agree on, right?
correct. Yes. Well, you're one of those people that the grass doesn't stay green beneath your feet creatively for very long. And first, we got to mention High Spirits, of course. For those who don't know, Chris, it's his flagship band, more or less, is High Spirits. Great metal band, and you're kind of in between doing some stuff. What's going on in the High Spirits camp before we dig into your other projects?
I guess High Spirits is in a bit of an intermission right now. We did some European gigs last fall. We did some gigs on the West Coast. Believe that was in March of this year, February or March of this year. And now we're kind of at a point where we're laying some plans for some US gigs that'll be in the fall, hopefully, if that all goes through, and also some gigs again in Europe in the spring. But we kind of go in bursts with that band. I mean, we're all grown ups. We all have the house job kids thing to some degree. Not all of us have all of those things, but collectively in a 5-piece band, there are a lot of those real life circumstances to manage. Sure. So kind of the way it works with the band is at the beginning of the year, we say, all right, guys, what's vacation time looking like this year? Where are some places that we want to hit that we haven't played before? Where are some places that we have played before, but maybe we're due to return to? And then we kind of piece out, these little tours that we do. Cause we don't, we've never been a hard touring full-time, we're not on the road 6 months a year. In a busy year, we're on the road for maybe a month or maybe 5 weeks, and split up into smaller segments.
And even that's hard. I mean, a bunch of older guys with kids and responsibilities and real lifing to do. Mm-hmm. That's a tall order.
Yeah. And that always comes first. I mean, even if, fortunately everybody in the band agrees on those kinds of priorities, but I think even if you don't and try to force the band ahead of those real life things, that's not going to be sustainable for very long, because it's that real life foundation that makes everything else possible. You can't be out on the road wondering if your house is going to fall apart or your partner's going to have changed the locks while you're out there. I mean, that is not a good it's not any kind of foundation to go out there and do your best and have fun. Yep. Because it's still supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Even when you've done it a bunch. So yeah, High Spirits is in a bit of a like planning phase, you could say. I think the next and I haven't said this widely, but it's also not a secret. I think the next recorded thing from High Spirits is going to be the proverbial oldies re-recorded release. Some handfuls of songs maybe that are, well, there's a few categories of songs I would choose for something like that. Some of the B-side songs that I think have potential to be heard by a wider audience. Some songs that are consistently in the live rotation and have become audience favorites that do not have a well-produced studio counterpart for other people to listen to. the best example of that is the song High Spirits, which we've recorded. There are 2 different studio versions of that, neither of which, in my opinion, really show that song in its full potential light. I think there's potential for a much more powerful production mix, whatever you want to call it. I've certainly gotten better as a singer since those songs were recorded. So that's another category of songs. I can say pretty confidently that I would not mess with anything from the Another Night album, because that album stands apart from the rest for a lot of people.
Kind of a breakthrough record for the band too, isn't it? I mean, that's the one a lot of people revert back to. You know?
Well, or they don't revert back to it because they never left. Like it's still in heavy rotation. I mean, we are I heard from High Roller, we're just about sold out of the 10th pressing of that on vinyl.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool. And I know, obviously because I'm the one managing it, I know that album sells about 3 to 1 versus any other album still. Obviously when we have a new release that that'll kind of, the new release will kind of spike for a little while. But in a time like this, when we haven't had a new release since 2023, and everything's just kind of on an equal plane, Another Night is the one that that does the business, and that's true with the merch designs too. Like that's the shirt that sells. So related to this oldies re-recorded album that I'm kind of imagining, like I think it would be risky to mess with any of those songs, honestly, because that album, like I said, kind of stands apart from the rest. It's other songs throughout the remainder of the catalog that I would love to kind of elevate to that level. Not commercially speaking, just in terms of like the bond that listeners will have with it. And it's not that I think the other albums haven't gotten a fair shake, because they very much have. Anyway, that's probably more detail than you need. But that's the next studio piece from High Spirits is going to be something like that.
Isn't it interesting when you have an album like that in your catalog? I mean, you haven't really done anything too far removed from Another Night. It just, why that one? Why, you scratch your head? Why do people keep coming back to that one? I mean, be thankful, but on the same token, how?
One's a lot more than 0.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to having like that kind of like evergreen album in the catalog.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it doesn't explain it all, but I think timing, when that album came out, I think it filled, I think it just hit the mark. I think people were in the mood.
Right time, right place type
album,
of thing.
Right at that time. And there was a lot, I think it had, at least on the surface, I think it had kind of a nostalgic appeal for a lot of people. But I don't think that's as strong of a factor maybe as it was at the time. I think it was actually, I don't remember who said this, but I saw a comment about that album that says, yes, it's a nostalgic album, but when you listen to it, you're not nostalgic for the 80s. You're nostalgic for 2011 when the album came out.
And it kind of broke some of the traditions of heavy metal. You look at that record, there's a sophistication and sleekness, the way it's designed and the way it looks, the Chicago skyline, and it's home for you. So. Yeah, I mean, it's home for you, and just it stands out in the racks. I just remember seeing it, I'm like, this just looks and feels different before I even hit play on it. You know, so something like that is exciting when everything's got demons and half naked women and pot leaves on it. It's nice to have something maybe from a different. And
I think that was a big plus. I think there were a lot of people who. Approached it with a very open mind, or approached it maybe with an optimism about it that was really to its benefit.
Yeah. And speaking of, kind of breaking with tradition and doing something a bit different here, let me see if I can pull this up. Yeah, this is it. Did that come through? It did. Let's talk about this album for a minute. Professori Season 2, the third album by Aktor. This is a band that you are involved with a couple other dudes, and you have a 5-year itch with this band, it seems like. Every 5 years, you guys put out a new record, and 2025, this one hit. And I got to say, I was telling you backstage, I listened to it to the first time today, and this album is a ton of fun. Seriously, it is one of those records. There's a playful side to it. There's some Voivod in it, all the keyboards, and there's a feeling of freedom, I think, in this record. And you just looking at the album cover, it does not stick to any sort of metal conventions here. I mean, what can you tell us about Aktor as a project? I'm not sure if many people are very familiar with this project.
No, I mean, as far as my roster of projects goes, it's definitely even within my obscure world, I think this is an obscure corridor of that world. Aktor was a project that came together between myself and two guys from Finland who have a band called Circle, and numerous side projects that kind of put me to shame in terms of their output. Pharaoh Overlord, I think, is one of the better known bands that they have on the side. And we started making music together, I think around 2014, and we went into it without a plan whatsoever, which for me was very challenging at the beginning because as a person with a variety of outlets, I can be very aware of the boundaries that help to define, like, okay, well, this is a high spirit song and this is a Super Christ song or whatever. I was very accustomed to kind of having those parameters kind of at every stage of the process. And what was funny about Aktor was I tried initially to have kind of creative direction conversations with the other guys, like, what are we going for? What do we want to sound like? And they kind of never would say. They would just kind of say, well, here's a song, do your thing. Like, I don't know. It's like, and at first I thought it was maybe like a language barrier thing or just a vocabulary thing. And then I realized that these were musicians who allow their process to be the main thing that determines the output. Like they find intentions and concepts to be limiting in a way that is counterproductive, if that makes sense. They just want to go for it. And our unique process as Aktor, which is kind of what a lot of bands do, passing files back and forth and, kind of like commenting on each other's stuff and adding, using the cloud really as our rehearsal room. They trusted, and I, by working with them, learned to trust that unique process as being what makes Aktor. And it's difficult also for me to talk about Aktor because I don't listen to music that sounds like it. To me, it's my only point of reference. And during the songwriting process, my only inspiration really comes from the demos that the other guys send to me. There may be 100 other bands that sound like us, but I don't know because I'm still listening to the same 10 albums that I was listening to when I was a kid.
Sure.
None of them sound like Aktor, but it's, again, at first it was a bit frustrating is not the right word, but it was a bit confusing because I'm kind of wandering around in these songs that these other guys are doing, not really knowing what I'm supposed to do, not having any direction or expectation. Now that we're on our third album together, I know that that's how it's going to go. And I know that there is the mutual trust amongst all of us that everybody just needs to do his thing and it's going to sound awesome in the end. Whether the rest of the world is going to listen to it and think it sounds awesome, that's kind of out of our hands. But we worked really hard on this one, and we did actually have a moment of kind of a creative meeting in advance to decide that we wanted this one to be a little harder, just for it to sonically be a little more aggressive, have the drums especially hit a little harder compared to the first two albums, because we thought the material called for it in this case.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons we brought Dan Swano in to mix it, was because we knew number one, that he wouldn't flinch at the number of layers, at the number of like all the keyboards and all the vocal harmonies and just all, like that saturated sound that it has. We knew that wouldn't phase him. We knew he'd get turned on by that, actually, which he did.
Yeah.
And we also knew that he can make it just hit, with more punch, have like a more, not like a aggressive death metal sound, but just not as much of that kind of classic rock character, I guess, that the first two records had.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a sci-fi vibe to it, hence maybe my Voivod connection, some squirrely chords and weird riff runs. But, you speak about Swano and the mix and the clarity of it. And you also have talked about your vocals improving over the years. And man, I hear it on this record big time. Like I was telling you backstage, it feels like you're really out front in this mix. You're there to carry some of this material that might be at times a little challenging for people, but you find a melody line. And how do you feel about your performance on here? To me, it sounds really fresh, and you're really stretching up there, and you're really nailing these higher end melody lines.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. And I feel vocally, I feel really happy with it. I mean, I feel really happy with all the aspects of the album. What was funny was because of the demos for this one were pretty well formed when they came to me. There was already a rhythm guitar, some lead guitar. A lot of the keyboards were already on the demos. And at first, I was kind of anxious about that because there were so many tones and, weird blended intervals of the different instruments that I'm like, how am I supposed to sing? How am I supposed to sing on this? Like, where does the vocal, which is the vocal melody, is supposed to be the most prominent melody of a song, right? At least of a pop song.
And the music should dictate somewhat of what the melody is going to be. And if you're having to figure out what that even is, I can see that's a conundrum.
It was a conundrum until I actually kind of got down in there and started working with it. And then I realized that they had actually made the task pretty easy, because they kind of left a path like right through everything else. And I didn't really have much, there wasn't much guesswork. Like, it was like, okay, these are the notes that are available to me. And those were the ones I used. And it's always a little different singing with Aktor compared to with High Spirits, because High Spirits is in E flat. We've always played in E flat, and Aktor's in standard tuning. So it's completely, it's like a half note. All the notes are a half note away from the ones I'm used to singing.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of acclimation there too. But, I did my thing, and,
crushed it. It sounds great.
Thank you.
Big favorites for me, the song Nemesis, I think it was. And, the other one towards the end. Nemesis stood out for sure. Like cool. I said, I listened to it for the first time today. When it was a song, I'm like, what song is this? This rules. And yeah, people go check out the album, the third Aktor album, Aktor. But you've got other stuff going on too. Wrote them down, Black Sites. Mm-hmm. And that is something you've got coming up. Comes out in July.
The record comes out in July. And unfortunately, I joined the band just in time to not play on the record. So I did have a little bit of input with the mix. I definitely had the opportunity to kind of make some suggestions with the mix and, the song order and things like that. Little stuff. The record turned out awesome. I can't really take any credit for how it turned out. That's a lot to Mark Sugar's credit. He's kind of the main guy with Black Sites. He's the guitarist, vocalist, does all the songwriting, manages the band and all that. But for a few years, I've been wanting to get back to playing drums. Drums was my first instrument, which maybe a lot of people don't realize. But I played drums as a little kid, the way all little kids kind of play drums. But then I kind of never really stopped, and especially as a teenager during high school. I mean, there was one summer, the summer when I was 15. When you're too old to go to tennis camp, but too young to really have a job. I mean, I played drums. I was in the basement playing drums for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I was never awesome, but it was definitely my best instrument and one of my favorite things, to do. One of my favorite activities is playing drums. And you get older, you live in apartments, life situations change, and I never stopped playing drums in a studio situation. Obviously I played drums on the High Spirits records. I played drums on most of my records, really. Dawnbringer, Pharaoh. I played a lot of drums on the Pharaoh albums. But
some for Noctimistium, or you just did a lot of songwriting for that?
That's a good question. I can't believe I don't know.
I don't remember. It seems like I knew this at one point, but I don't remember shit.
I played. There was like a 7-inch or a split 7-inch that had a Motorhead cover.
All right.
Surprise, surprise. And I played drums on that.
Yeah.
And there may have been something else, but I'm honestly not sure. Most of my role with that band was in like a songwriting and producing role. But meanwhile, I was playing drums on a lot of other studio projects, not as much, on stage or in a rehearsal room, with a band. So that was something a few years ago. I came to feel like that was missing from my life, and that it would be cool to join a band playing drums. And it took a little while for me to kind of notice a situation that might be the right fit, musically, might be the right, difficulty level, might be the right amount of commitment, given all the other stuff that I have going on. But Mark and I are friends, for many years. We're neighbors. We see each other fairly regularly. And it was maybe a year and a half ago, he was talking about, it's been frustrating to have so many people kind of coming and going from Black Sites and not having been able to kind of build up the same momentum as a live band that he'd been able to build up kind of as a recording artist, which is a lot. I mean, that album that's about to come out is album number 5, and he's already got most of album 6 demoed out. So a lot of momentum on the recording side,
sure. Not
as much on the live side. So I started kind of nudging him when I would see him, be like, if you ever think about getting another lineup together, I'm looking to start playing drums again. And I kind of had to wear him down, or he kind of had to reach a moment where he was ready to kind of give it a go and put a new lineup together. But short story long, that's kind of how it went. And we've been jamming pretty consistently for about a year. We've done one show so far, and I think we have 3. We have the Legions of Metal next weekend, and I think we have 2 more that are going to follow from there. So that's been cool, and I've gotten what I wanted out of it. Being able to play at it's not super technical, grinding death metal or anything like that. It's not demanding in that way, but it is demanding, and that there's a lot of dynamic nuance to the songs. The songs are fairly long, and have a lot of interesting changes in them. So it's been a good challenge in that way, and just being able to be in a rehearsal room and kind of
be a band.
Yeah,
feel like you're part of a band
like
environment.
I'm in a band situation from behind the drums again has been really satisfying, and I like the material a lot. I mean, I really like the material, and I'm grateful that I'll have an opportunity to give a little bit more input next time around.
That's awesome. Yeah, great to hear that. Back on the kit, and you also did a vocal session for a band called Midnight Rider, the new album Limited
that was something
Infinity.
that kind of came out of the blue. I knew their guitarist, a guy named his name's Jochen, but he goes by Bloomy, Boumi, and I got to know him through Metal Lucifer. Actually, he was in the lineup of Metal Lucifer that Super Christ played with back in 2003. The first time Metal Lucifer came over, there were 3 that came from Japan and 2 that came. He was one of the Germans that came over, so he was part of that lineup, and he's on the albums too. I believe he's on all the albums. Actually, I'm not sure, but in any case, then he and I were part of a temporary Metal Lucifer lineup together in 2014, where I played bass for a couple shows with them, and it was then that we kind of got to know each other a little better. We were traveling together and actually playing together on stage, not just as part of the same lineup of bands as had been the case previously. He also has a band called Metal Inquisitor that may be familiar, and he's been the band leader. I think they're broken up now, but he was kind of the main songwriter, band leader there. And I think kind of in parallel to that, he started a more classic, like 70s hard rock kind of band called Midnight Rider. And they had done 2 albums, and he started having, as I understand it, they started having problems with the singer. I think there was conflict with the singer and the rhythm section of the band, and I don't know the full story, but what the outcome was that they all left, rather than either the singer leaving or the rhythm section leaving. They all left, kind of leaving him alone with an entire album that he had written. So he kind of basically put together a lineup in order to fulfill that album and to move forward. And like I said, out of the blue, contacted me and asked if I'd be interested in singing on it. And I said, sure. I'd love to. I've always admired him as a guitar player. He's the kind of guitar player that just has perfect intonation. He's not he's more of an Adrian Smith style guitar player. Is kind of how I would describe him.
More calculated.
Yeah, maybe I would compare him more to Dave Murray in that way, because he has a lot of finesse to his playing, and like I said, his intonation is just is just perfect. And as a singer, that's what you want to be singing over.
Chasing notes every time.
Yeah, you don't want to hear a power chord where that top note is a little chorusy or whatever. I mean, you've been in a recording studio, you know how delicate those kinds of things can be. And for growling vocals, doesn't matter. For clean vocals, you need to be able to. So if there was like one thing that really kind of hooked me and intrigued me, it's like, I want to sing over that guy's playing for sure. Yeah. And the lyrics were written, the melodies were written. It was kind of all handed to me. It was
perfect
to say no. I was like, sure, let's do it. And the record turned out pretty cool. I know he put a lot of work into he recorded it himself, mixed it himself. And it was his first time. Obviously, it was our first time recording together. I believe it was the first time that he had worked with the new drummer and bass player. So it was all kind of like a live fire exercise. But it was fun project. Also in standard tuning. So I got to use the Aktor notes.
Nice.
Not the Aktor harmonies, but the Aktor notes.
Well, that's great. You've been super busy there, but let's switch over to your literary pursuits. Last time you were here 4 years ago, we were talking about this infamous Bathory book that you've been working on for 8 years, 9 years.
No, 8.
We're getting where we at?
It'll be exactly 8 years tomorrow, Don't
That's
ask me
awesome.
how I know, but I know.
What's the status report?
The status report is that I thought I was going to finish it this week and that I would be able to like hold up the ream of paper and show you guys and say, look, I finished it. But it turned out to be a pretty crazy week on the home front, and I need maybe 1 or 2 more days to be able to. So I'll have to text you a follow-up picture of me holding up the ream. It's actually going to be slightly more than it's probably going to come in right around 505 pages in Microsoft Word, which are single spaced. So in terms of like a bound book, that's closer to 1,000 pages. And I'm sure it could be 1,000 pages once we get the images in there. But yeah, I am like this close to done with what'll be the, I don't want to call it a rough draft because I've been kind of not writing a final draft, but I haven't just been, bleh, you know what I mean? I'm kind of trying to craft my words and, you know, keep my shit pretty tight. Even in this first draft. And once that's done, it'll go over to my partner who's going to edit it. And that will maybe lead to some interesting
and
difficult debates between us. I hope not too difficult.
Yeah.
But, we're ready. And from there it'll go into layout. And I really hope that it'll be in everybody's hands by the end of this year, because it's something really special. It's been a huge part of this phase of my life working on it too. I'm super proud of it. But I'm ready for it to be done.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. And last time we were talking, you were saying you were having a bit of a challenge getting the family, like the sister and other people in the family, warmed up to the idea of talking to you. Did that soften a bit? No.
Yeah. No. And we knew at the beginning that was going to be an obstacle, and we would have loved for them to participate. Our hope is that when they see the book, they'll look at it and say, fuck, we should have talked to these guys. It would have been so cool to be part of this. I don't know that will be the reaction. But at the beginning of our process, as I said, we knew that this was likely to be one of the guidelines that we had to work around. So we did not set it up where anything would depend on their participation. We designed our process, and we designed the kind of the way the story is told in a way that it would work with or without their input.
Right on. Alan, I've been running amok. You have anything you want to ask Chris? I'm sorry.
No,
I just get going and keep on rolling.
I've been hanging out in the chat with folks, but no, you've covered all the bases quite well.
Well, very excited for this book, man. Obviously, Bathory's a big favorite of a bunch of us old farts. And
new farts, too, I think.
Yeah, even some new farts.
Kind of like, it's almost at the Motorhead level of like, it's, universal. Maybe not the whole, everybody's going to have their favorites and their ups and downs throughout the catalog. But I mean, as far as a conversation piece, the Bathory catalog is pretty much the ultimate, for heavy metal banter sessions. I mean, I wrote the book, so.
Yeah. And I got to imagine, trying to navigate what's true and what's not. I mean, he didn't have the internet back then, so he was an enigma. He lied, like people said. He lied about a lot of things because it built mystique around Bathory, and it worked. It worked straight up, but
it did. And it was smart.
Yeah. So how do you navigate this when you're digging into a project like that, knowing going in that a good percentage of this is bullshit? I want to get to what's real and what isn't.
Well, actually, I think it was my partner who said at the beginning, the way we have to do this is pretend we don't know anything. Take everything that Quorthon wrote and throw it out and start over.
Gotcha.
And find the true narrative, find out what their actual movements were. And that's not to say that some of Quorthon's own words are not in the book, because obviously they are. And very often we come to find that he wouldn't, that lying is not, or fabricating is not quite the right term for what he did. He would take a true story and a false story and kind of do this to have two
sketch
stories
it.
that are half true.
Yeah.
And he would often start with something that did happen to one of his friends, and then like kind of reappropriate that into the Bathory story. So yeah, he had kind of a variety of these like rhetorical devices that he would use to kind of build the Bathory myth. And there's all kinds of inconsistencies and the things to kind of sort out over the years. But like I said, it was my partner Kola who was like, we have to like block out as much of that from our thinking as we can. Like once we feel like we know what reality was, then we can go back and reference that and see, oh, he actually told the truth here and here. You know, imagine that.
Right on. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's been a process, and that's been as researchers or investigators, that's obviously something we've been very careful about, you know, to try to like de-bias, like deprogram ourselves and approach it in an unbiased way. And he actually, Kola went to an even further extreme, because he's done a majority of the interviews. He's fluent in Swedish, and most of the people we've interviewed are Swedish. So he's been the one to do, again, a majority of interviews. And throughout that process, he was very reluctant to read the text that I was writing along the way, because he didn't want to bias himself, you know, with something that I was revealing, or a certain, you know, framing that I might have been experimenting with. He kind of wanted to stay in his own lane, I guess, as the interviewer. So it's been, I mean, these are some of the reasons it's been such a long process.
Sure.
To bring it all together, is because of how thorough and how kind of painstaking we've been with the sourcing.
When you start peeling back the layers of the onion, you know, you just want to get to the center. You got to figure it. It sounds, I can't wait, man.
And in this case, you don't know where the center, you don't know how many layers there are. I mean, that's another reason that it's taken so long, is we didn't know where the bottom of that sea was. We didn't know, we knew where some of the threads to pull were, but we didn't know how long those threads were, and what was on the other end of them was often a surprise too.
Right on. So we've been calling this the Bathory book. Is there a title, or you're not disclosing?
There is, but I'm not sure I can say it.
That's okay.
No,
yeah, and there is a publisher, and I don't think I could say that either. But it's fair. All pretty, that stuff's all pretty buttoned up. It's really a matter of just like getting it out of my Microsoft Word doc and into a book form.
Right on. Well, folks, it's coming, and a lot of people have been asking, when are we doing a deep dive on the Bathory albums? Well, we've been saving this for this gentleman right here. So as soon as that book's out, we're going to get back after Alan and I have read it and get him in, talk about the book, and do a dive on the Bathory catalog. That will not take 16 hours.
Won't be a minute past 19 hours.
Years is what it takes.
Yeah, right on. But yeah, thanks, Chris, for catching us up. Like I said, you and I talk a bit behind the scenes for work things and whatnot, and it's good to catch up with you and see. Like I said, it's good to see you, man. Seriously.
Me too.
Yep.
And
yeah, and folks, there are links to a lot of these projects in the show notes. So if some of these you're not familiar with, please go check them out. We've got links down there. You can easily access them. There's no excuse for not clicking it, because it's right down there for you.
yes. And we've seen all the nice comments about the Maniacs love. So cheers to all you old Metal Maniacs readers. Right on. But today, I think it was Chris who chose. I just can't believe we haven't done this year. We've covered most of the 90s, it seems
We've
like.
shot all around it, yeah.
Yeah. So Chris decided we should maybe talk about some of the best albums from the year 1998. And Chris Maycock, what were you doing in 1998?
1998. I was in college. The first half would have been my sophomore year, and then the second half would have been my junior year at Penn State, where I went to school. And what was I doing? I don't know. Normal, 20-year-old college kid stuff.
You're writing for Maniacs at that point, weren't you? It seems like I was.
Yeah. I was doing Maniacs. I was doing my own fanzine, which was called Word of Mouth.
Oh, that's right.
I think I was still.
I should have grabbed a couple. I have a couple of those somewhere in the pile.
Oh, yeah. Don't be in too much of a hurry there.
But, good stuff. It was always good.
It was fun. I don't know that it was always, the output was always good, but it was a fun thing to do. I enjoyed the type of like critical listening that went along with that. I don't know that what I was writing really had any outward value, but I was doing that. I was writing for Dawnbringer. The first Dawnbringer album had come out, and I was writing 98. So I was writing Catharsis Instinct, even though that didn't get actually recorded, I think, until a couple years later. But the big thing that happened, maybe, if in a musical way for me, was kind of the beginning of, what do I want to call it? I kind of had a rock and roll awakening, I guess, that began that year. That was the year I kind of got into Zeke and Helicopters, and some bands like that. I mean, I was still listening to metal constantly, but I also kind of started to get turned on to these other bands that were, I mean, Zeke is, well, no, not in 98. I mean, they were more, Zeke is more of a punk band at that point, certainly with metal influences. But then a band like the Helicopters, I mean, that was just kind of like garage rock, but updated in a way that was, aggressive and I guess punkish. I mean, I hate using that term because that makes it sound lame, but the way we got turned on to those bands was a friend of ours had his best friend from back home was a roadie for that band, the Queers, and he would go over to Europe with the Queers and get turned on to all these, like Scandinavian rock bands and like all this like European underground and indie stuff that, just wasn't on our radar at all.
Yeah.
We were definitely tuned into the Euro metal bands. I mean, that's kind of where all the action was metal-wise. So it's not too surprising that that's where all the action would be, like on the rock and roll side. But every time, dude's name was Head, every time Head would come back from a tour with the Queers, he would have all these records with him. And then our buddy would go over to his house and get turned on to all these bands. And that's how we found out about the Helicopters. The one that like totally shook me to my core was this one, Turbo Negro. We had a tape that Head made us that said Turbo Negro Ass Cobra on one side, and there was no sticker on the other side. So for a little while, we thought the band was actually called Turbo Negro Ass Cobra. We didn't realize that Ass Cobra was the name of the record, and Turbo Negro was the name of the band.
Right.
But then we caught on, and so that was in like, when was that? In the spring of 98, I guess. And by the fall of 98, that was like one of my all-time favorite records of like my life. I mean, we literally that fall listened to that album hundreds of times, if not thousands of times. And it was the combination of that album and one of the Helicopters albums that inspired us to form the band that actually became Superchrist a few years later. So these are some pretty, like I said, that album really kind of moved me. It kind of picked me up and set me down somewhere else. So when the topic of 1998 comes up, this is where my head goes instantly. That's number one.
Right on. What do you think about Turbo Negro with a different singer? Is it the same
Haven't
vibe?
checked them out.
Haven't checked it out. Okay.
No, and even the last couple they did with Hank didn't do a lot for me either. I love Scandinavian Leather.
Is that the one with the or I can never say that word. Or the snake eating its tail on that I have. That's the only one I have by them. It's a good record.
I love that one, and I loved that album allowed them to kind of succeed, do a lot of the touring and get like the recognition that they deserved. I have not been as impressed with anything since then. A couple songs here and there, but it's like they had a really good gimmick.
Sure.
I want to say, or a really good, let's call it an image.
Yeah.
They had a really good image that did a lot. I mean, they had the music to back it up, but the image also did a lot of the work, I think, of kind of extending their popularity and making them the cult thing that they were and that they became even more of. But like a lot of things, it just kind of became a parody of itself. In certain ways, and I'm good with this one. I could stick with this one, and Ask Cobra. I like Ask Cobra a lot too. That's a really, really mean record. Apocalypse Dudes is more of a party record.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Okay, first run for Chris. Nice one. Alan, what were you doing in 1998?
98 was a strange year for me. Just personally, I had to relocate across the country at the end of the year. So, especially the last third of that year or so was not much fun trying to wrap up a lot of loose ends in one place and figure out what to do in the next place. Musically, I was living in a place that had like no current local music scene. So everything new that I was hearing through tape trading, which I was doing a lot of. I bought a lot of blank TDK tapes in 1998 and just would sit there and I was poking around on the internet. This was, GeoCities type era where people would post trade lists and you just email back and forth and set up these, ridiculous, 16 TDK 90-minute tapes full of everything you had never heard before kind of trades. That was really the only way I was getting any new music through 98. The other thing that was kind of different or new on the scene in 98 was that eBay was starting to become a thing. Yeah, maybe it had been around a little bit longer than that, but 98 was the first time I noticed it, and it was the first time you started hearing about eBay popping up in mainstream references here and there. It was starting to catch on as a place to go look for collectible stuff. And as soon as I stumbled into it, it's like, oh, heavy metal records. Well, okay.
My life is now over.
Hey, Wallach, come here.
Or is it just beginning?
Yeah. But shit was cheaper back then. Records, they were giving them away.
$1.
You could get so much shit for... Anyway, sorry.
Oh, yeah. And no, I mean, I took full advantage of that. I had saved up some money for some stuff and I ended up not needing it because other plans fell through. So it's just like, I'm taking some of this money and spending it on records. So, yeah, I was buying, Merciful Fate 7 inches, Overkill's EPs, all kinds of, random stuff from the 80s. Because for the past couple of years where I was living, there was tons of old vinyl available. It was an area that had a pretty heavy or a pretty vibrant heavy metal scene in the 80s, you could tell, but you got into the mid 90s, everybody had grown up, cut their hair, and sold their stuff to the local record stores and had just sat there collecting dust until I wandered into town in the mid 90s and started buying all of it. So eBay was just kind of the next step for that. I was like, I've bought all the stuff locally. Oh, well, here I can buy even more old stuff, and it doesn't matter if I'm local or not. So yeah, it was a weird year for me in terms of heavy metal stuff. I was still listening to a ton, but it was all coming either from old 80s vinyl through eBay or TDK tapes sent from all over the freaking place. It was a big tape trading year. In terms of looking over lists of releases that came out in 98, something I noticed is that it's kind of an interesting year for metal. I mean, we've covered like 97 and stuff before, and that was a huge year with a lot of big classic releases. 98 has plenty of good releases we can talk about, but it's a year where it feels like no particular style of heavy metal is necessarily dominating the scene. I mean, like, death metal had not really caught its second wind yet. The death metal that was popular was more the melodic, Gothenburg kind of stuff, which was doing well, but your veteran Florida brutal kind of stuff, had fallen out of favor and hadn't really had time to pick up any retro support yet. Black metal had already kind of wrapped up its original, necro Scandinavian phase. Bands were already kind of back on the scene, ready to do things. Emperor had done their thing. Then a bunch of them went to jail. Then they came out of jail and they'd already done another album and been hailed as things. So, black metal was, in a way, really getting more into that melodic strain of things. It was more the Dimmu Borgers and other bands we're talking about that were starting to be the front page black metal news. And even traditional metal was already back on the map. Hammerfall had kind of broken through that glass ceiling in 97. And so all of a sudden in 98, people were a lot more willing stateside to pay attention to bands that just played quote unquote traditional heavy metal. And so that's something I noticed looking at, all the titles. And I had a lot more stuff from 98 than I thought I might. But yeah, it's not like it's 50% death metal or 70% black metal. There's a really even spread across the different styles of heavy metal.
I noticed that too.
Okay, I'm glad it's not just like a collection bias or something on my part. That's good to hear. One other thing I noticed is that it's a year where your next generation of bands are really starting to make a name for themselves. It's not a year loaded down with must-have albums by these long-term titans. A lot of those bands, I guess they had an off year or they were in kind of a down period, and we'll talk about at least one of those. But a lot of the releases from this year that are sort of noteworthy, it's the younger bands who were doing like maybe their third album, second album, fourth album, and they were really starting to get entrenched as that new wave of bands that were going to be the big deal as you wrapped up the 90s and got into the 2000s. So yeah, it's interesting stylistically and interesting that you see a lot of younger, hungry bands kind of making front page news, not just bands that had 15 or 20 year legacies already established.
Right.
And black metal, all the side project bands were starting to become brands on their own.
Yes, exactly.
Moving forward and commercializing the commercialization of black metal. The underground cult wasn't so underground culty anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was part of it with the melodic strain really becoming more popular. Kind of played right into that timing wise too, for sure. Yep.
You gonna show one?
Yeah, let's start with the big ugly smelly elephant in the room. I said that the veteran bands weren't necessarily having a whole lot to say, but there was one big band that put out an album that year. That band was Iron Maiden.
There we go.
Called Virtual 11.
I pulled that as the worst of the year.
It might have been. Yeah, it's a rough album. I do not have a physical copy, and I do not want a physical copy. That's why I just pulled it up on my phone here. It's the second Blaze album, of course. The first one, Virtual, X Factor, is okay. It's not their best album. It's not a terrible album. It's an interesting album. They were trying something different with a new vocalist. It made sense. It was kind of reflective of the times. Here is where they had to really sell you on that concept. Like, no, this is Iron Maiden moving forward. Here you go. And boy, did it miss the mark badly. Long meandering songs that are super repetitive. Blaze, it's not that he's a bad singer, but he's not got the chops to front this kind of giant ship. He just can't helm this project. And the band is just not writing good material. There's just no other way around it. It's not fair to put it all on Bailey that he somehow wrecked this. Bruce wouldn't sound good singing these songs either. There's one or two that are okay, but man, this album just feels like a total cluster.
Kill the choruses in most of these songs, you might have a good song, but the damn chorus for same thing over and over and over and over.
So much repetition.
God. Yeah.
And I kind of knew that. I remember reading, and it was probably in Maniacs, leading up to the release of the album. There was, of course, a big spread on Maiden. They were interviewing Steve Harris, and I don't remember which other member it was.
Blaze.
Oh, okay. And yeah, and the focus kept shifting to soccer, how they were doing all this promo stuff around soccer, and pictures of the guys wearing custom, Iron Maiden soccer jerseys. And they were doing, I don't know if they were doing like a charity match or some kind of exhibition game or something. And I'm just reading this thinking, you're supposed to be promoting your new album.
Deflecting.
And it's an important album. Again, as your second album without, Bruce, this is a kind of a big deal. You need to really, again, sell this concept. And you're just distracted talking about how excited you are about playing some fucking soccer game. That, in the back of my mind, we kind of went to yellow alerts, like, don't expect too much from this album. And I was still disappointed. So, yeah, there's no Priest album from 98. There's no Metallica album from 98, I don't think. Again, a lot of the big bands are quiet in this particular year. Iron Maiden's the one who kind of popped their head above ground, and I really wish they hadn't. I'm pausing to think, but it's got to be the worst Iron Maiden album for most folks. I can't think of one off the top of my head that's any farther down the totem pole, and I think it's worse by a pretty wide margin. So yeah, we'll get that one out of the way to start with, and the rest of the evening we can mostly talk about things I think are good.
It does have the Klansman on it. That's a good song.
I said there were one or two.
Yeah.
There are one or two that are okay. It also has Angel and the Gambler on it, though.
Oh,
yeah.
God. Terrible.
Well, it was me who went to England to interview them for Metal Maniacs.
Oh, okay. I did not remember that.
I went to Steve Harris's house and studio and was played The Klansman and Future Real at impossibly loud volume. I almost cried. It was so loud. But it was, and it wasn't on a boombox. It was in like the studio control room with the giant speakers and the Atari computer controlling the faders and all that. And I had no choice but to think it sounded pretty good, because I was a 19-year-old kid who just got flown on Rod Smallwood's dime to Steve Harris's house to get a preview of the new record. And
what are you gonna do? Say it sucks?
and I didn't think it did suck. I thought it was, in that moment, that's,
Oh, sure.
Well, they played you two of the better songs on the album. So
exactly.
They knew. They even fucking knew.
Sure. And you're swept up in all that for sure. You should have been.
The pageantry of it.
I don't think they knew that they were going to get like a nerdy teenager, it's going to be who the magazine was going to send to do the interview and get his, fucking booklets autographed and stuff. So so the interview piece that I wrote based on that was very positive, and I haven't gone back to reread it, but I would stand by having a positive reaction or response to my situation. I mean, for sure. I mean, that's fucking crazy. I kind of forget that even happened in my life. Until something like this comes up. And then the album came out and I got assigned to review it, and there I was honest as well. And Maniacs gave me a whole page to to be very, very honest
Eviscerate your catch.
about the other 7 songs or whatever that were on the record, and that was the last time I was flown by Rod Smallwood to Steve Harris's house.
Yep.
Believe it or not, I got cut off after that. And like I said, it's such a bizarre thing to have experienced, especially at that age, that I kind of forget that I did that until the conversation comes up, and I don't want to give too much of our time.
No. Please do.
This
That's
is
an awesome story.
My personal,
Tell it. It's a great fucking story. Tell it.
I never got flown to Steve Harris's house. I got no story to tell.
I was asked to fly to some places, but I chickened out every time. I'd be like, no, I'm good.
I was listening to it like in a college dining hall or on a Walkman or something.
Yeah.
That might have been the same. That might have been the same time. It had to have been that I also saw one of those Osmos Productions package tours that happened to be in London the night that I happened to be in London to do this Iron Maiden thing. I think that was the same trip. I'd have to look it up to be sure, but I'm pretty sure, that I got to London, and I'm by myself. I got to London and found like a Tower Records or something, and was flipping through a Terrorizer magazine, and I saw this little ad or insert about, the Osmos Production World Domination Tour that's coming through. And it was Dark Tranquillity, Enslaved, Bewitched, Swordmaster, and that band De La Mort that was more of like a kind of like a
D-beat.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember looking at that ad and being like, oh, that would be so awesome if that was, that tour was coming through here while I was here. And then I looked again. I was like, holy fuck, that's tonight. And so I got to see Enslaved on the L tour and Dark Tranquillity on the Mind's Eye, and like Bewitched. Like, how often do you get to see Bewitched live? And yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So like I said, the whole thing is so surreal that I forget it even happened. But it did.
So Lee did ask, you were in Steve Harris's house?
Yeah, I got picked up by somebody who worked for Sanctuary. Don't remember the guy's name, but somebody who worked in the office there. Yeah, they put me in a hotel. He came and picked me up from the hotel and drove me to Steve Harris's house, and Steve and Blaze were there. Yeah, just played me the tracks, and then I interviewed them separately for like half an hour each, maybe something like that. Got, like I said, got my booklet signed, got all my friends' booklets signed that they had sent along with me and everything.
Nice.
And that was about it. And now I'm not positive about the world domination thing. I'm wondering, because I had been in London the previous year. I got to check on that.
Right on. Cool. Anyway, man.
Yeah.
Fun story.
Sure. Sorry for the sidetrack, but
no, those are perfectly acceptable. That's what these shows are for. For me, I wasn't, going hanging out with Steve Harris, seeing if his toilet paper is over or under. My wife is an under person. I'm an over person, and the under drives me nuts. So I would have had maybe some different thoughts about Steve Harris if it was under. It would have been maybe the reason why they wrote Angel and the Gambler if it was under. I don't know.
Maybe he wrote it on the toilet paper because it kept falling off the roll.
Maybe. But yeah, 1998 for me was, I can't remember the exact year I started Maniacs. It might have been 97, but I did my own zine, Worm Gear, and that was doing okay. And our friend Jeff Wagner asked me to join Maniacs, which I never got over the imposter syndrome of that whole thing. But what a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Great community of people, which I'm still friends with today. And some of them. And the big takeaway, looking through the list of, just looking at music that came out this year, just seeing a lot of these album covers that I have not seen or thought about since 1998, it was a weird unlocking the time capsule type of, we've always kind of done this with these type of episodes have done that, but for some reason, a lot of these albums and covers are just like, holy shit. Yeah. I remember having that. And what did I do with that? And, just the feeling of being completely plugged in to something that I've always loved and worshiped. And it was suddenly, I'm a person that always was a seeker, wanted to hear new bands. And now I'm afforded the luxury of hearing too much fucking music. Let's be honest. It's too much. It's overkill. It's sensory overload. It is things that you would normally have loved, you start hating. And
you love donuts, do you? Then have all the donuts in the world.
And then you start looking for more complicated and strange things to entertain yourself. Not bitching here. I'm just saying that's kind of when you're so much sensory overload, it kind of changes your perception. And only is it years later that you go back and hey, thanks, man. You go back and start, oh, this really was good. And, but yeah, it was a year where, again, I was struggling with imposter syndrome, but having a wonderful time doing this thing and doing a lot of trips for Maniacs, covering the metal fests around the US. Always fun, drunken, dragging my carcass around, talking to people, a lot of fun. But, one album that stands out for 1998 that it might have been high on my list of the year-end list. It might even been number one. I don't remember, but it is Bethlehem Suicide. This is one of those albums that is kind of a culmination of where the band was heading. It's probably their most experimental output at the time. And it isn't because they were doing anything with keyboards or anything too weird like that. They were just putting weird avant-garde sounds, like someone writing with a magic marker on a board and, some German random talking in the background. But when the music kicked in, it was just painfully sad. And it felt like they were going through some things. Yeah. And, this could be the precursor to what is now known as DSBM. But this is so much better than that. This is so much more tuned into something truly dark and desperate. Again, very downtrodden. You got Marco Kellgren from Dionysus or Deinonychus, and Kate, I can't remember her name or where she came from on vocals, but just absolutely sick and twisted vocals rantings. They replaced two people to replace a guy named Lanferman on their first two albums. It was, again, very desperate and miserable screaming. But this album here was the culmination of those first two albums, just more lively and tortured and still somehow musical and easy to listen to, which I guess is the trick. They hook you in with a good flowing, dark, depressive black metal and stick you with these weird vibes. But no, this Suicide is a great, great, great album by Bethlehem. They're third. Chris, your next one.
Well, first I want to say I checked on Setlist FM just now, and yes, the Osmos tour was something that I saw the night before I went to Steve Harris's house, but it was in December of 1997. It was not a 1998 achievement, so we can strike the entire story from the record.
But it was for an album that came out
Dateline, so I think it counts.
True. Yep.
Well, this name already came up earlier in the conversation. Mm-hmm. Metal Lucifer, Heavy Metal Drill, the first full-length album. I believe the Heavy Metal Hunter EP preceded that. It's a big breakthrough for me. I'm not sure whether Alan is a fan of Metal Lucifer, but they definitely adopted a lot of what people appreciate about the new wave of British heavy metal, the simplicity of the songwriting, the kind of rougher edged musicianship and guitar tones that we hear. And of course, a lot of the guitar harmony pieces and the cool the solos, the guitar solos being the real climax within a song. These were all things about Metal Lucifer that really hooked me right away. And then, of course, you have the somewhat polarizing, I guess, vocal delivery, the unusual pronunciation that you experience with a lot of Japanese metal that often you can kind of tune your ears to, and it just becomes part of what you enjoy about it. Or again, some people can't really get past that with certain Japanese bands, and that's their prerogative. But for me, it just adds to the whole kind of uniqueness of the Metal Lucifer experience. I kind of became a super fan instantly. I think it was the guitar solos that grabbed me at first, and just kind of kept me coming back. And then as I talked about earlier, I kind of developed more of a personal history or a personal connection with them much later. And they've gone on, I think, to do 4 or 5 more albums since then. But I have to say Heavy Metal Drill is the one that definitely has a majority of my favorite Metal Lucifer tunes. Heavy Metal Is My Way, Heavy Metal Drill, Heavy Metal Hunters on here, Wolfman, great song, Monster of the Earth, awesome song, awesome guitar solo. One unique characteristic of this particular CD is it still has the Metal Haven Chicago price tag on it, and indeed I purchased this my very first time visiting that store before I even lived in Chicago. There were actually 2 copies of this Heavy Metal Drill CD on the used rack at Metal Haven, and I bought them both. Looks like it was $6.99. I bought them both, gave the other one to Jeff Wagner, and the rest is history.
That first store was very small and very cram-packed with stuff. It was impressive. Things stacked on the floor the way you're not supposed to stack records. They were stacked like that.
Yeah, and you really had to put in your time to kind of dig out like the real. And I do remember that first. It was a visit on a weekend when I was kind of familiarizing with myself with the city, deciding whether I would want to move here. And I remember I bought the 2 Metal Lucifer CDs. They had a copy of Enslaved Eld on vinyl, and a couple other things. I just went in and spent $100, and I was like, I don't know if this is a reason to move here or a reason to not move here, because I'm going to be broke within a week.
Yeah. But always a deterrent. You move into, it's like the druggie moving in next to the dealer.
Yeah, right.
And then you work for them.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, shit. All right. I could drink beer and sell metal and come home with most of my paycheck still in the till. Great. Alan.
All right. Well, we've touched on that. Yeah, there weren't a lot of the huge name acts that put out albums in 98. We already talked about our main. There's one other one that should be brought up at this phase, and that is Death. Death releases their last studio album this year, Sound of Perseverance. This one tends to be a little controversial among fans. Some people love this era of Chuck's project. Some people really don't care for this one too much. I've never had a big problem with it. And I'm one of those people, I don't have a strong preference on eras of Death. I like the early material a lot. I like the middle material a lot, and I like the later material a lot. I think the whole catalog's quite solid start to finish. I get why this one is a little off-putting to some people. The vocal approach has changed a lot. The death metal elements have phased out a lot. They're being replaced with more and more traditional kind of metal elements. The logo is as clean as it can get at this point. I mean, there's nothing left to take but the scythe. And if you take the scythe, you take the whole logo. There's just not much cobwebs or grime or gore or flames or anything else. Yeah, it's all gone. So yeah, I get why most people would probably rank this as their least favorite album in the Death catalog. even so, it would still be a pretty good album. I rank it pretty low, but not at the very bottom. I think most of the material does hold up pretty well as long as the different approach isn't a deal breaker for a person. And of course, yeah, it's the last album he would do under the Death moniker. You get the Control Denied album later on, and that's kind of it. But yeah, Death was the one other sort of tentpole level band that I think we need to touch on for 98. Could be others. Again, I said Metallica didn't release anything. I think they did release like Garage Incorporated in 98. Or yeah, Garage Inc. I didn't pull that. If y'all want to talk about that, that's absolutely fine. But that's not like a new studio set of songs. So not quite the same as having a new full length out.
Slayer dropped Diabolos in Musica, and Anthrax put out Volume 8.
Wow, they were really giving Iron Maiden a run for their money to the bottom of that barrel.
Yeah, exactly. And Megadeth was after Cryptic Writings, or before it. I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay, I completely forgot about the Anthrax and Slayer, with good reason. I will say, if some folks dig those, that's cool. But yeah, not for me at all.
Whole lot of disappointment.
Yeah. Again, I think it's really a year for the younger bands to take the front. And from here on out, I don't know if anything I'll be talking about is more than like a fourth, or maybe there's a fifth album in a catalog, but a lot of them are going to be like, second and third albums from bands. But got to wait for my next turn. Right now, it's Marty's turn.
All right, I'll get this teetering stack of vinyl chewed down a bit. The second album by Norway's Eternus, And So the Night Became. This is their last truly great record for a long time. It is basically, the follow-up to Beyond the Wandering Moon, which is a much more organic sounding record, heavier, thicker. Just, it feels like the album cover in a lot of ways, that moon peeking, through the trees on a foggy night. This here is a little bit cleaner sounding, but still the band is still in that realm of folky death/black metal flowing. The second track on here, As I March, absolutely killer. Yep. Killer song. It's just, again, so folky. It's got just such a 6/8 waltz to it at times. I don't know, man. This album was really good, and they decided shortly hereafter to start getting more U.S. brutal death metal style. Not even anything very special. They basically shed their charm and decided to go with just, beans and rice death metal. And
hey, let's do what everybody else is doing. That'll help us.
Exactly.
Right?
And it wasn't until a few years ago they put out the Heathen album and now the Philosopher album, where they're kind of back in this spirit, and it's good. They're really good again. They kind of fell right back into step. But these are special times for this band here. And we had a big poll on our site. Is this black metal or death metal? And the black metal's won out. I think it's Norwegian Bolt Thrower. Everybody else thinks I'm wrong and stupid. So I'll just pass my turn over to Chris.
Well, here's at least a fourth or fifth album, Alan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe sixth.
Oh, boy.
Seventh.
Count. Actually, it's seven, yeah.
Yes, so this is seventh. First one with, and I'm blanking on his name, but unique Candlemass lineup. It's got Michael Amat playing guitar. I really liked this one. I liked it when it came out.
Never heard that record. That still has evaded me over the years.
I like it too.
It's a different kind of Candlemass, but still the same. I mean, Candlemass is Leif Edling the way that Black Sabbath is Tony Iommi. I mean, you can change anybody else. You can change anybody else in the band, and it's still that band. With the exception of that guy. Again, unique lineup. I think there's officially a keyboard player in this particular lineup too. And I believe this was recorded at a time when Leif Edling was trying to break away and do abstract algebra instead.
Yep.
And Music for Nations, the record company, said, nuh-uh. So I think certain elements of this album were actually for an abstract algebra album that then he kind of rewrote or repackaged as Candlemass. It works for me. Like I said, the production's a little weird. The guitar sound is a little scooped. There's probably more keyboard than some people would like, but it's got a really cool kind of dim atmosphere that I would say they perfected on the next album, which is one of my all-time favorite albums from
Great record.
Sun.
Yes.
But this is very much a worthy precursor to that one, even though the lineup is, again, at least half swapped out by that time, only a year later. That definitely worth having in any Candlemass collection. This one, I would say.
Yep, I would agree.
Knowing it's the same singer, that Bjorn Flodquist or whatever is the same singer on 14th Son, or
Yep,
definitely interested.
That next album too.
What were you gonna say, Alan? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I was gonna say, I agree with everything Chris said. That's a good description of it, and it's also interesting because a ton of folks in the chat are saying they haven't heard that one, and that was a problem. That while it's a bigger, kind of legacy act with a long catalog by then, I don't think that album had any serious US.
I was going to say it was not.
It was impossible to find.
It was not released in the US. I'm looking at the lineup credits now, and it is, other than the guitarist, which is Mike Amat of Carcass and Arch Enemy on this one. That was the only change. He left, and they got a guy named Matt Stahl from the 13th Son. So other than the guitar player, this is the same drummer, singer, and obviously bass player as from the 13th Son.
Yep. But and I like your description of it as a worthy precursor to 13th Son. So if some folks have heard that one and really dug it, but never backed up to hear this one, it's definitely worth your time. It's not as good, but it's a worthy precursor. That was the perfect way to summarize it.
All right.
Let's pick something by a younger band that started to really make a name for themselves here. Let's go with this one. One of my favorite Catatonia albums, Discouraged Ones. A change for the band. This band went through rapid changes across their first few releases. Different vocalists, different lineups, different styles. This is the one where they clean things up a lot. And this is one that really sets the stage for what would become their successful sound. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people don't seem to trace it this far back. For a lot of people, they'll start talking about Catatonia becoming Catatonia on one of the next two albums, like Tonight's Decision or Last Fair Deal Gone Down. They definitely codified the sound on those albums. But it's really here where you hear them start to do all those basics. The songs are simplified. You're stripping out a lot of the old Death Doom mechanics. The vocal, of course, is the big change. Everything's now very clean and leaning into that sadder, sort of despondent sound that would become the melancholy at the root of all those later albums for a long time, at least. I lost track of Catatonia over the years. I know for some folks, it's like the band of the past 20 to 30 years, which is really cool. As they just started getting through more albums, they became a little samey to me. It just wasn't a sound I wanted to hear over and over.
Agreed.
But Discouraged Ones, this is an album I can go back to endlessly and play. The picture on the back, I always thought was perfect for the mood of this album. Just that very sad, gray, dreary kind of melancholy. Works great here. I like the previous stuff a ton too. Both the previous albums and EPs are fantastic material. Up to this, and including this, Catatonia did no wrong in my book. I was very, very hyped on the band through this. It was just, the later albums became something I wasn't as into. But this is one of those bands that it's album number 3. It's time for them to step forward. It's where you get I'm pretty sure this is the first time they used that particular version of the logo. Before that, they always had the big flourishy looking one, which was fine, but
badass.
This is a killer logo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Badass logo.
This one is not as badass, of course, but
it works.
It works, and it's something that's a little more digestible. This was a band that was moving on to a much wider audience. You've got to simplify the logo a bit for that kind of appeal. But yeah, love that album and still do.
All right. Well, I remember getting a promo for this and listening to it and thinking, this is really talented, but it's just too positive. I was so up my ass with the extreme stuff, but so it took me years to finally circle back around to
Everybody Drink.
Everybody Drink. Yes. Best band on the planet.
Halloween album.
Best band on the planet. Just saying it. I checked. They're still good. Yeah, many years later, coming back to this after I realized that I indeed loved Andy Darris's voice in Halloween. And, I was a Kiska purist, I guess, and a Hanson purist. And when I heard Darris for the first time, he just didn't work for me. But now going back, I think, what was I thinking? So many records I had to catch up with. But this one, this is kind of the Andy's third album. And there's some rippers on here.
Oh, yeah.
Revelation, written by the drummer, Uli Kush.
I think he wrote Push, too.
He did. He wrote Push. Mm-hmm. There's a couple on here he did, I believe, other than that, too. But, I'm listening to this promo, and I hear songs like Hey Lord and what was it? I Can. I'm thinking, God, these guys are just so fucking positive. I'm listening to Bethlehem. I'm listening to that Catatonia. I'm listening to some Unholy, which I'm going to show later. And I'm just down in the dumps drinking my liver away and, no time for this fun, happy Halloween shit. Years later, this is an absolute standout record in their catalog. And if you have any doubt that Andy Darris didn't write the ship for this band, he totally did. He brought his songwriting talent to the band. He sang well. He didn't try to be anything he wasn't. He was just what he was. So, yeah. If you followed him, I went back to the Pink Cream 69 shit, and I even like some of that stuff. So he was a good addition, and this is a fantastic record, 100%. There isn't really
yes, there is.
Yeah, Lavidate, Dominium. Yeah, there's a couple.
Be honest.
But still, there's more bangers than not, so.
Totally. And I was going to pull that one too. And the only reason I don't have it in my stack is because I think it's in my teenager's room because he's a big Halloween.
So is mine.
Fan. So,
yep.
Yeah. The songwriting power that was in that band during that period. Yeah, still. But especially during, they had a, like you said, they had a songwriting drummer.
Yeah. And he was a fantastic fucking drummer too.
Fantastic drummer. He always had a really good mix. Like always a lot of cymbals. Like I like a loud high end on a drum mix, and there's always a lot of just like a good live ass kicking. Like it sounds like a drum kit.
Yep.
It didn't nowadays their drum mix sounds like it's all bass drums. Sounds like it's a drum kit made out of bass drums, which I don't dig that. Like I like the top end.
And they're doing shit now, like Danny recorded 3 different drum kits depending on the song in the studio, and then I'm like,
then why did you mix them all to sound like shit?
Right. Yeah.
That was my reaction. Whatever. He's a badass drummer too.
He's a great drummer too, but
it's like the drum mix, and it's not just Halloween. It's like the nowadays drum mix just doesn't make sense.
100%.
But
all right, you're up.
I'm up. Well, this pairs well with
indeed
with Halloween. In some ways, I don't know what there is to be said about this album that hasn't been said a million times. Obviously, it was a huge breakthrough for them, for their genre overall. To me, that was Blind Guardian was the band that kind of had the heaviness of 80s Metallica and the melody and imagination of 80s Iron Maiden during a decade when both of those bands were kind of lacking in that kind of organic heaviness that Metallica had, and that imaginative songwriting flair that Maiden had at their best. Both of those bands were kind of in the tank during the 90s, and Blind Guardian to me was picking up the slack. And I think they managed to connect with their fans musically and lyrically as well, in ways that Metallica and Maiden were connecting with their fans during the 80s. That being said, it's not my favorite Blind Guardian album. It's definitely in the top third, but I would definitely give Imaginations the edge on that.
Oh, 100%.
Probably also Tales from the Twilight World.
That's also fair.
I would put Nightfall above Somewhere Far Beyond.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, huge breakthrough album for them. Really kind of solidified their standing as I think they'd had a lot of success in Germany and in Japan.
Oh yeah.
Prior to that, and I was proud, and I am still proud to have been the one that got them in Metal Maniacs around when this album came out, and hopefully help them kind of cross the bridge to a different market around that. That's around when Century Media picked up a lot of their catalog on a license basis. So it seemed like, again, not my favorite album by them, and therefore not what I would call their best album, but I think it was very impactful in a lot of ways in terms of really getting them over the tipping point to what they became.
It was my first Blind Guardian record as well.
And I fucking love it. I'm not trying to say I don't love it, because I absolutely do. I love Imaginations and probably Tales like even more.
Yeah. Agreed. Good one.
Yep.
Alan.
Yeah. Good points all. Yeah. It's a watershed album for that band. They've never come close to something like that again, but I mean, they built to that album for a decade, and to take that kind of very difficult concept and turn it into an album in such magnificent fashion, you don't get concept albums that good most of the time.
No, you don't. I mean, you don't get albums with that level of production value, and just like that amount of legitimate, not just the ingenuity part of creative work and album production, but the work, like the number of hours and just it sounds cheesy, but like as a project management, from a project management standpoint, the amount of tracks and different elements that they were organizing on that album, and they pulled it off. They got away with it. And I think when you look at the band photo of them here, like, I don't know what you think, but to me, they look exhausted. They look just like
heavy metal's hard work.
It is, and especially back then when I don't think they were running on a Pro Tools system back then. No. I mean, it was probably some sort of hybridized. A lot of studios back then were kind of like bridging the gap between they were using tape, and then they were using hard disk, either to control the mixing board or to have like a supplemental like submix of tracks in the computer. I don't honestly know, but I know it definitely was not the same process that it would be today.
Yeah,
with that album. So just like you said, a watershed album, totally impressive piece of art by any measure.
Indeed. And you're right, they look the way most people appear when they try to read the Silmarillion. We tried to make it into a record.
I gave up on that. I wasn't smart enough to read that book. Straight up, I called it. All right. Band's second album, and a ferocious album, one of my favorite black metal albums of all time. Folks have talked about it in the chat tonight. Dawn, with Slaughter Son of Crown of the Triarchy. This is just a beast of an album. Marty and I have talked about it many times, so there's only so much more to say. It's just an incredibly intense album, start to finish. And a big part of it is the drum performance. The drums just are unrelenting for most of this album. The vocal approach, though, is great too. The guitar lines are
fantastic. It really just hammers with a certain vicious melody that you didn't get from a ton of black metal this year. As we discussed earlier, black metal was getting into a little more of a digestible format for a lot of folks, a little more fun, a little safer, a little more melodic. This album is none of these things. This album looks at those and it just starts hammering you into the ground. And I love it. If it has a flaw, it is a tad long. Some of the songs could have been edited down a little bit here and there. Not anything major, but by the time you get to the end of the album, you have been listening for a while and you feel it just because of the unrelenting fury of that album. Yeah, it is to this day probably in my top 5 black metal albums ever released. Old favorite, Dawn, Slaughter Son of the Triarchy.
All right. For me, next is Diabolical Conquest, Incantation. This is my favorite Incantation record. I love the first two, Onward to Golgotha especially, but Daniel Corchado on vocals, he really kind of goes for it. He's singing a little bit differently than he's used to. I interviewed him back during this time, and he said he killed himself singing for this. Crushed his vocals. But this album is just, I love Daniel's take on what he thinks Incantation is. It's just really good and tortured. John's riffs, he's just an endless fountain of riffs. And, you can hear some autopsyisms mixed in here, especially on the onto Infinite Twilight, the last song in the Majesty of Infernal Damnation. That combo leading the track, the album out to close it. He doesn't hide the fact, and just the riffs are so good, and the sound, he's finally kind of nailed a good sound here. Whereas I'm not saying the first two aren't good. I think revisionist history, it's now considered killer and good and scary the way those albums sounded. I'm pretty sure that's not the way he wanted those albums to sound when they came out.
The second album, no. He's given in-depth interviews where that album is so mangled compared to anything they were trying to accomplish with it. I mean, it worked out well in the end for him, but no, that second one, it's amazing that album ever got released if you read into the history of it.
Yeah. And here, they're touring around with, Corchado had big boots to fill as far as, Pillared people saw him as kind of the voice of this style. He just booming and demonic and super deep. Corchado made it his own. He did a good job with it. And these songs are really well written. I like the artwork, a little chaotic, but very cool. And this was a special record for 1998. I listened to the shit out of this, talked to the band a few times for different publications and saw them a bunch. Great. Good times. Good record. And, they still continue to put out good shit. It's just that one for me has always been a little bit more special than what came after it. But
for a lot of folks, rank that one, at or near the top.
Yeah. All right, Chris.
Is that the only one that Daniel sang on, or was he on the following one also?
He sang on an EP. I can't remember the name. It's got the goat. It's the one with the goat on it.
The goat one.
I'd have to look it up. He sang on a mini CD, and I don't think because the next one was Infernal Storm, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's not on Infernal Storm.
He's not on that one. That was the guy from Death Rune. The guy from Death Rune was in singing on Infernal Storm. But yeah, he did that and an EP, and then a bunch of live stuff, of course.
Cool.
All right, you're up, sir.
Now for something a little different, a Wasp live album.
Oh yeah,
Double Live Assassins, which was actually the album that got me into Wasp.
Nice.
Like growing up and as a teenager, we being myself and my friends, kind of ignored Wasp because we thought they were in the Twisted Sister or Motley Crue, and I say that knowing that those are not the same kind of band, but to us at a young age, they were definitely. Just the makeup and hairspray, cock rock or glam metal or whatever you want to call it. That was all stuff that we just didn't touch. There was so much thrash metal and we were into Maiden, we were into Motorhead and Metallica, and like we just, you know, kind of laughed at all this other stuff, and we thought that Wasp was equal to Poison or, you know, Winger and those bands. And I had another friend who actually likes those bands. He likes Winger and Britney Fox, but he also likes Cannibal Corpse, and he likes Halloween, and he likes Emperor. Like, he's kind of a musical omnivore, and he's very knowledgeable about, you know, what these bands have in common and what they don't. And I remember this album came out, this Double Live Assassins, and I got a promo of it on cassette. And I was like, I don't even want to listen to this. Here. And I gave it to him, my friend who I was talking about, who kind of like, at that time, he liked everything. I was like, oh, yeah, you like Wasp. Here you go. And he took it home. And a day or two later, he came back to my place with the tape. He's like, dude, did you listen to this? He's like, you would fucking love this. I was like, seriously? He's like, yeah, listen to it and listen to the whole thing. So I did. And he was right. It kicked my ass. It was like finding like some like missing piece that I didn't know I was missing. I loved I love just like the feel of it, and like the vocal harmonies, which of course are all like, you know, this was kind of the beginning of the backing tracks era for Wasp. Actually, I have a conspiracy theory about this, that they recorded their backing tracks and then just like released the version that you could buy, you know what I mean, backing tracks in retail form. Again, that's a conspiracy theory of mine. I'm not putting that out there as true. And if it is true, I don't care, because it, like I said, it kicked my ass. It's a good kind of overview of their catalog at the time. Kill Fuck Die was the newest album.
I like that record. Which
as of today is actually their mid. I was counting their albums. It's Kill Fuck Die is the middle album from Wasp.
Oh, wow. Huh.
In 1998, it was the newest. And those are not my favorite tracks on here. Like the live versions, studio versions, because the studio kind of disco, kind of Marilyn Manson-ish, and like that didn't work for me. But to hear them played more with like a kick-ass rock band and a live drummer, they come across better. That being said, you get the Headless Children, you get not just a Crimson Idol medley, you get like a lot of full songs, and all the usual hits that they have been playing ever since then. But it just sounds good. It's a good mix. Kick-ass band. Chris Holmes is still in the band at this point. Yeah, that's what turned me on to Wasp, and nowadays they're one of my favorite bands. And I even like their newer, like the last 3 Wasp records are 3 of my favorite ones too. So
yeah, agree.
I was grateful that he kind of threw that tape back in my face, like, oh man, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
that was the right move on his part. So bless his little heart.
Blackie is probably one of the most unique singers out there. What a great voice that guy has. It's
awesome.
Completely Wasp defining. No band sounds like Wasp because of him.
Yep. I think we've all had at least 1 or 2 bands where we did that kind of thing, just kind of like, yeah, I don't want to listen to that. And somebody else finally is just like, shut up and listen to it.
Yeah, what's wrong with you, man?
And then we was like, oh, oops, messed that up.
Yeah, or it just wasn't ready to hear it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to wait for the right time.
I don't remember checking them out prior to that. I think I just formed a certain stereotype in my mind of what I thought they sounded like, and that was enough. And then when I actually listened to them, I think it may have just been that simple, you know? Like, oh, this is what they actually sound like when I listen to them. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Album number 3 for a band that has made maybe a few tiny waves in the heavy metal community since then. Opeth released My Arms, Your Hearse. I only have this like candlelight collection thing, which is why I'm having to show a tiny little picture on the back of the booklet.
Wednesday's album club coming up next Wednesday.
Oh, is this one y'all are doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Logan picked it.
Huh. Okay. Good deal. So yeah, this is the album where they really, again, start to get more attention. The first two albums had done fine, but you'd had some lineup changes. They sound a little different from each other. But this is the one that where people really started to freak out about this band being something special. And it would just continue to build and build from there. Now, I'm on the record as never having gotten fully into Opeth. And it's funny because they were a band I followed from the start. I had Orchid when it came out, pretty soon after it came out. Picked up these as they came out. And back then, these had to be bought as imports. There wasn't, again, really U.S. distribution for this stuff until even Still Life didn't have U.S. distribution at first because I had to buy that as an import. Then I realized I was spending a lot of money on Opeth CDs and not getting that into them and kind of stopped doing that. But yeah, My Armchair Hearse, I mean, to this day, for a lot of folks, it is, you know, the Opeth album, at least amongst their early stuff. And it, of course, spawned their most popular song, Demon of the Fall, which is a live staple and for most folks going to, be on the top of their Opeth playlist. It's a band I've tried a lot with over the years and eventually just made my peace with that. Maybe they're not for me, but it's just another one of these, European bands that are really starting to make waves in 1998. Not quite at the stage of global domination just yet, but they were definitely getting onto people's radar very quickly with the release of My Armchair Hearse.
All right. Well, we showed Incantation with Daniel on Diabolical Conquest, so we got to show his band, The Chasm. Death Cult for Eternity, The Triumph. This came out in 98 as well, so he was doing double duty. And The Chasm are one of those bands, they are a true occult feeling sounding band, and they absolutely crushed live. Holy shit. This album is, I end up liking the one after it a bit more, but this one here has got a lot of dark charm to it. And, you know, we were talking, you know, Chris was talking earlier about being a vocalist and having trouble singing along to, you know, someone that doesn't have good intonation on their instrument. There's a little of that squirrely intonation in the guitars here, but that's always kind of that charm. It makes the shit sound more sick to me. Good stuff. Always struggled a bit with having really pristine production. He didn't really start getting that until a bit later, but again, it all adds to the underground flavor of this record. It's just really well done. Great heavy metal style solos, mixed in with their style of death metal. And again, live, they just absolutely destroyed just about any band that they're playing with, for sure. But I can't remember which album this is.
It's the third one.
Third one? Okay.
Yep. Because that's where they kind of start to shed the really doomy aspects of the previous two albums, and kind of starting to come to their sound. It's also the last album that has that really, really cool circular logo. I always like that.
Yeah, I always like that one too.
Chasm logo a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a good record. Like Alan said, they're still not super fast on here. They're still kind of in a mid-pace plod, but the riffs are good and the solo work is fantastic, and Daniel's voice is awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. We've discussed doing a Chasm / Corchado episode sometime. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
It'd be cool to have him on. I've completely lost contact with that guy over the years. I don't even know if he's still in Chicago anymore. Is he?
As far as I know.
Is he really? Oh, right on. I thought I heard he went back to Mexico, but I don't know.
It's been a couple of years, so I don't know. Last time I had contact with him, he was still in the city.
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah, good dude. Interesting life story too.
Yeah.
What little I know. It's always good to see him.
Yeah, he's always super, super friendly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Is it my turn?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to do one and then I need a bio break after that.
Right on.
Let's see. Here's one that I thought might get picked by more than one of us. It's the Haunted debut.
I do not own it.
Really?
Nope.
I liked this one a lot. It was kind of after At the Gates broke up. The drummer and
Adrian.
The drummer Adrian and the Bjorler brothers formed the Haunted with Jensen from Seance, who actually was doing a lot of the songwriting or a lot of the riff writing, I guess.
And Witchery, which also put out a record this year in 98.
Was Witchery already happening by now? Okay.
I think they put out a record
Maybe their
in
first
'98, their first one. Yeah,
Yeah, you're
that was
right.
also Patrick Jensen.
Yeah, you're right. Now that you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even think of Witchery. Because this is much better in my
It is.
opinion.
Oh yeah, it is.
Fair.
I didn't go too far with The Haunted. I definitely stuck around for album 2. This one is a lot more aggressive, and it's more of a modern thrash metal album than I would normally find myself appreciating. I've never been a big thrash guy. The thrash I like tends to be from the 80s and tends to be German. But obviously this is from 98 and is Swedish. And it was just a real ass kicker of an album. It has that Studio Fredman production that we all loved back then, that was like super clear and thick, and you could really hear every drum and every every guitar string individually almost, but it was still just like crushingly heavy. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. As a 1998 album, it's certainly one of the best. Holds up well. Album 2 holds up well too. After that, I don't know. Of course, they changed singers for album 2, and they changed drummers for album 2 also. So I guess it's a band that's never had a super consistent lineup. But of course, coming off the breakup of At the Gates, you have to wonder if maybe the Bueller's had some
Leftovers.
some riffs in the hopper, or some
Yeah.
song ideas in the hopper from that. And listening to it, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if that were true. But definitely worth checking out if you never have. I mean, a lot of people wrote it off as, too Pantera influenced or sounded too much like hardcore, but I never heard it that way. It's just kind of an ass kicker of a thrash record to me.
Actually heard good things about their latest one too that came out this year. A lot of people saying it's a step in a great direction for them. So I'm interested to check it out. I haven't got around to it yet, but
They've definitely taken some risks, even as early as the second album. Like their Trouble influences started coming out, and the singer that they got for the second album had a lot more of a diverse range, I would say, and the way he was utilized for the song. So no, I'm not surprised to hear that they're still kind of experimenting and expanding a little bit.
Jensen, I always like the Seance albums and even some Witchery. He's a good riff writer.
He's a great riff writer. Yeah, and he's done a lot of not session stuff, but he's kind of been a touring guitarist for hire. I think he actually did a Brujeria fill-in tour once or twice too. So
right on.
He's very accomplished. As a musician, as a guitarist.
That's good stuff. Cool. Yeah, good pick.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought of The Haunted in quite a while.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, and we'll pick a more obscure one this time. Having covering some of the big bases, let's cover one that people tend to forget about. This is the band's second album. It is from the UK, Solstice, with New Dark Age. This was one I knew nothing about this band and saw it in a record store. This would have been in 99. It came out in 98. But yeah, in 99, saw it flipping through records. And I was like, that looks really cool. I liked the artwork on it a lot. Get it out of here to have it show up a little better. Thought it was, very interesting design. Thought the title was very cool. It's, a Lovecraftian quote from, I believe, The Call of Cthulhu, where they're talking about, if you go madness and eventually mankind would slip into a new dark age. But it was like $19 It was released on Misanthropy, which, very interesting label, put out a lot of, cool kind of different sounding stuff. It was like $18. I was like, man, I ain't got $18, but I literally didn't have $18 to spend on a CD that I didn't know anything about the band. So I was like, file it in the back of the brain for some other day. Went home, and I don't know if it was that day or a couple of days later, got the next issue of Metal Maniacs. I was subscribed at the time, so it was in the mailbox when I came home one day. And this was, I think, the first album reviewed in the review section that month. They had like about a half page write up by Jeff Wagner. It's like Solstice New Dark Age. I was like, oh, hey, that's that thing I saw at the record store. Okay, let's read this and see what it's like. So, read through the review, and Jeff's description was like, and basically by the time I finished reading, I was like, I got to come up with $18. So I scrounged around for a few days, skipped a few meals, and went back to the record store as soon as I could. It was still there. And picked it up, and it became an instant favorite. Didn't know it at the time, but it's very different than the band's debut. This band literally got their start because the guys went to a Candlemass concert in the UK and were like, that's awesome. We want to make a band that sounds like Candlemass. And you really hear that on the debut album from Solstice. It's called Lamentations, and it is a very good attempt at Candlemass flavored sort of epic doom metal with roots in traditional heavy metal. It's a debut release. It still has a few little rough patches here and there, but it is a good release. This one sounds nothing like it. On this one, they're going for these really different, epic, but at times more martial kind of approaches to the songs. It's got just this big, epic, defiant streak to it. It's not trying to sound like woe is me doomy. It's more like angry doomy, like marching off to your fate, but by God, I'll ram my sword through your guts as you kill me kind of angry. The lyrics are really intricately written. You can tell they spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly how to piece together the words for these lines. There's a lot of like convoluted alliteration in the lines. They have a new vocalist, and he has some interesting delivery choices that work well. Some people might listen to it and not like it. He'll do like a lot of like rolled R's at times, here and there, and it just really fits with the music quite well. Solstice couldn't really capitalize on it. Again, as a release on Misanthropy, they didn't get a lot of distribution. The band always had lineup issues. They became something of an underground cult favorite among fans of like Manowar flavored epic heavy metal. And there's definitely a fair dose of that style in here. Manowar is not a bad reference point. But lineup instability, constant changes, there wasn't much of a follow-up. There was an EP, there was a long hiatus. They've put out different like collections of demos and stuff over the years, and they finally started releasing some newer things. Even those are probably 10 or 15 years old by now at least. And they just never really kind of recaptured this sound. The main guy in the band is Rich Walker. And again, he's had difficulties in pinning down a lineup. He's had a big falling out with the vocalist on this album and kind of trashes the vocal performance. I think it fits the music stellar. And the stuff since then it's fine, but it doesn't have that special feel. I've never really heard something else that sounds that much like New Dark Age. It has its own little space in epic, doomy heavy metal. And the albums that come later just don't. So yeah, it's kind of it's not a completely overlooked gem. Like I said, it definitely has a cult following. Folks know, if you like that style, you know this album. But if you're not heavily invested in that style of epic metal, then yeah, Solstice is probably one that hasn't caught up with you. So that's one of my pet albums from '98, Solstice's New Dark Age.
All right. Well, let's go to Finland for a couple rounds here. This is a band that has put out a few things. This is the only album I have by them, but it's Fall the Leaf, Evanescent, Ever Fading.
Oh, yeah.
This record is really good. As far as melodic, super melodic death metal, I guess. It's one of those, if you are a big fan of Obsequiae, you can kind of hear right away in the opening notes of this album where Tanner pulled some inspiration, we'll say. This is the same kind of beautiful, medieval, almost folky melody lines, and mixed with grim, death metal styled vocals, but really atmospheric, pretty even. I mean, I would call these melody lines pretty, mixed in with a melodic death metal context. There's some black metal in here too, I guess. I don't know. It's on the line of where do you pigeonhole something like this? But this is a band that really didn't get its due, and they changed their sound a bunch as they moved forward. I think they got a little kind of like bands like Zisma, and they started to really experiment quickly. So I don't know. This is the only one I have by them, and it's really good, really high quality. So Evanescent, Ever Fading by Fall of the Leaf. Check that out if you can find a copy. I think it's been reissued recently-ish. I could be wrong, though. Chris.
I got a couple of mean ones, I guess, following from The Haunted. I don't know if you know this one.
Oh, yeah.
Another Chicago band.
Yep.
This album's fucking awesome. It's kind of the way... How to describe it? It's very Celtic Frost-ish.
Yeah.
It can be reminiscent along those lines. It can be reminiscent of when Dark Throne changed their sound.
Sure.
Not in 1998, but when they kind of reinvented themselves as more of just kind of a, when they kind of brought the rock and roll into their sound. The Scepter album is very rock and roll in its own way, while obviously being over the top metal as well.
Great cover.
What's that?
It's a great cover.
The cover's awesome. The album title is awesome. I actually had I bought some merch from them once, and they sent me a shirt that was like a 2X or whatever, something I was never going to fit into, but it's had I'm Going to Hell on it, so I actually cut that out. And I had a hoodie and I sewed it onto like right there so that everybody would know that I'm going to hell. And there's another Scepter album which is almost as good, but this one just like it just kicks my ass in a really like basic kind of primitive way. There's almost like a and maybe again it relates or doesn't relate, but compares to the Dark Throne thing. There's a very like FM radio kind of mentality to the way they write their songs. It's like they're writing these hit songs about being metal degenerates, and it just totally works. I mean, they were awesome. This might be my favorite heavy metal album to come from Chicago, and I know that's saying a lot, but I really think that could be true. It's definitely, if you were to do the Mount Rushmore thing with Chicago metal, this would definitely make mine. They did one more record after this and then just kind of vanished. I was lucky to see them live once, I think in 2003, although it may have been 2002. Whenever it was, I believe ended up being their last show, not because they quit. They just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
I don't know if the band members drifted apart or, I don't know any of the guys locally or whatever. So I have no idea what the band's story is, which is maybe one of the reasons I like the album so much. There's absolutely nothing to kind of color my experience of it one way or the other. But and it's not even part of that because there was that whole like throwback thrash metal thing happening around 1998 too, that like, the Scepter album definitely looks like it could be kind of part of that. Certainly in the spiked armband sort of way, but musically it's way more stripped down rock and roll. And I definitely recommend it.
That I haven't listened to that album in 1,000 years, but it always kind of lumped him in my brain with like Usurper.
In a way,
Celtic Frost worship type of thing, and yeah.
Usurper to me is Scepter is very like controlled and super tight, and not in a way that's mechanized or whatever, but it's just very direct. More like another Chicago band, Funeral Nation, just like very just kind of very meat and potatoes. I'm not finding the right way to describe it.
Well, like
Usurper,
Cyanide too. They're meat and potatoes too.
Sure,
and,
Cyanide.
Yeah.
They're more like mid-tempo. The more mid-tempo Cyanide stuff definitely has the same kind of feel, and just with really powerful drums. The drums do a lot of the work in both Scepter and in Cyanide. Usurper to me is a little more feral, just a little more. There's more of a wildness, certainly in the delivery, but I think also in the songwriting. I would put Scepter and Cyanide closer to each other than I would put either to Usurper. But it's kind of splitting hairs. I mean, it's all just alcoholic Chicago metal. So
yeah. Right on. Good one, Alan.
All right, let's see. Continuing with tonight's thesis of younger bands that are really taking the spotlight. Cradle of Filth released album number 3 with Cruelty and the Beast. This is the last Cradle of Filth album I feel a need to own. But I still do enjoy this one when I'm in the mood for it. This is a later pressing. The art's been changed slightly, so if folks are looking at it and thinking that looks slightly weird, yes, she's posed differently in the bathtub in the art for this version. It just comes with a bonus disc that has some extra songs on it. Cradle was another band that had really just broken out over the past couple of years. They got a lot of attention for all the theatrics and blasphemy and boobies. Let's just be honest. Put some bad words and a pretty girl and a bunch of gothy vampire stuff together, and you're probably going to develop a fan base.
It never goes out of style.
It's a formula that will work.
Boobies will forever sell. Forever.
Yep. So yeah, the debut, had gotten them on the radar. I think it was really the second album though had much better distribution. More people got to hear it, and by the time this came out, everybody was all about Cradle. Again, as a band I had kind of kept up with and followed along. I'd heard a lot of their demo stuff through the tape trading circuits. Yeah, and it was interesting. A lot of the really early stuff was very raw sounding. By this point, they're nothing like that whatsoever. Like I said, it's still a good Cradle album. After this, I completely lost interest, though, in the band. I've heard, albums here and there, and it's just like, sure, whatever. Did not hold my interest, but I still do like the first 3. My memory for this one, it came out in April of 98, about the same time that Misfits, American Psycho, their comeback album, was released. And I couldn't buy either of them at the time they came out because I was in the middle of the Chihuahuan Desert digging up dinosaur bones for like almost a month solid. We were just camping in the middle of nowhere in a national park. We had the permits and everything. Paperwork was done. So yeah, we were out there just digging for 3 weeks. It's also when, yeah, I think this is right. I think it was also almost the exact same time that Phantom Menace hit theaters, episode 1. And so,
the molestation of my childhood, basically.
But there's me and 3. I think there were 3 other grad students out there with me. The others, had at least a passing interest in heavy metal and punk stuff, and they were all huge Star Wars nerds. And it's just like, what did we do in a former life to get stuck out here in the middle of the desert when episode 1 gets released and the Misfits record comes out? And I'm like, and this is happening too. So when we finally made it back to civilization weeks later, I went to the record store, and amazingly, they had both this and the Misfits new releases. Again, where I was working at the time, they just didn't keep up with new releases for this kind of music. But they had them both. I bought them both. The day we crawled out of that desert, we literally went back to our apartment, dropped, 2 weeks worth of field gear on the floor. We all took turns taking a shower, and we immediately got in the truck and drove to the movie theater and stood in line for the next episode 1 tickets. And a few hours later, we walked out being like, you understand a goddamn thing that fucking Jar Jar character said? I have no fucking clue what just happened. It was a rough Return to Civilization.
I had a friend that stood up as the credits were rolling, and he went, "You suck!" and people like applauded afterwards. Like,
not to put it off on a complete tangent for Star Wars, but yeah, we all left the theater that night being like, I literally couldn't understand most of the dialogue that character even said. What the fuck happened? But we went back and watched it again literally the next afternoon on a matinee. And it was a matinee, so it was a lot more like families with kids watching it. And of course, they all thought
Kids
Jar Jar
loved
was
it.
extremely funny.
Yeah, yeah.
And that helped a lot, to be honest. Watching be like, oh, okay, I get it. He's the funny character. He's for them. He's not for me, the jaded nerd who grew up watching this stuff. That character is for them to enjoy. I don't have to enjoy it. And seeing it twice, I've kind of picked up the speech pattern now, so it makes a little more sense. That softened the blow on the Jar Jar thing quite a bit. It's like, okay, I'm never going to get into this character, but he has a role here. They're supposed to be a character for the kids. That's the character for the kids. Great. If I hadn't seen it surrounded by a bunch of 10-year-olds in the same theater, it might have continued to grate on me. But at that point, I was able to make my peace and let it go. And with that, we'll now return to your regularly scheduled heavy metal broadcast.
Thank God it wasn't Smurfs.
Oh, Misa think that's Smurfy. Chris is wondering what the hell just happened.
Yeah.
Well,
Don't get them started. I'm going to diverge a bit from Finland. And since Chris brought up Chicago, we'll go back to Chicago. And this is in between Judas Iscariot Records. Sarcophagus put out Requiem to the Death of Passion. This is Andrew Harris's band that was came before Judas Iscariot, but ran tangent to it for a while. And as you can imagine, the music got a bit more black metal as the times changed and whatnot. This is a really good record. It a lot of ways better than Judas Iscariot because obviously Andrew's drumming wasn't tip top shape, but that's part of the charm of that whole project, I guess. But yeah, this is a band that started out kind of a death metal band and a technically adept death metal band, and as they went, they got bit by the black metal bug, which a lot of bands did during this time, let's face it, and they were still good at it. They were putting out good stuff. You've got Dwayne Timlin on drums, really good at blasting, and Marcus Kohler, great bass player. What the hell is he in? What Commandant?
He was in Forest of Impaled for a little while.
Yep.
And then Commandant. And he's in a kick-ass Celtic Frost tribute band now called Hellfrost.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is, maybe nothing to wax too poetic on. It's just really well done. If you wanted to imagine Judas Iscariot a little bit more musically challenging, this is kind of the realm. It would be a good band to check out at this stage in the game. I think they had one more album after this, didn't they?
Yeah, I think there's two
more, right? I missed the final one somehow, but yeah, good. I always enjoyed it. Chris,
I said I had some mean ones, and this is one of the meanest albums
rules
that I know.
Yeah.
It's kind of an anomaly. There's really, to my knowledge, there is nothing else like this album.
For people, sorry to interrupt you, people listening, this is December Wolves, completely dehumanized.
Yeah, their second album of 3. Their first album, I don't remember the title, but it's
Till 10 Years.
Till 10 Years, which I don't even think had been released before they started disowning it. Two guys,
I like it.
It's two guys who kind of owned who the band belonged to. Like I said, kind of disowned the debut right away because it was too gentle. It was had too many gothy influences or whatever. It was just too soft, and they pushed things 180 degrees in the other direction. The first record was black metal. This one is certainly also black metal, but in a very different way.
Modern, very modern.
At the time, it was very modern. It was like the more brutal kind of Norwegian approach that, like, that band Cadaver Inc. maybe is in a realm with them.
Yeah, that's a good one.
One of the Norway Gehenna albums was maybe in a realm with this, but this album just destroys them all. It is the most mean-spirited, raw, genuine U.S. black metal album of all time. When a few years later the USBM was a kind of a term that was, you know, almost a genre term or an identifier that was being applied to various bands that I won't name, some of which were okay, some of which were not. I always thought the USBM term, category, whatever you want to call it, had started and had been just completely obliterated. Like, this is the only USBM album as far as I'm concerned. Can't recommend it enough. Like, I actually have a physical response to listening to this album. It's, like I said, it is so intense, caustic and mean-spirited and entertaining. There are hundreds of movie samples that kind of like move this along. The drumming is awesome. The production is super weird and cool. I can't recommend it enough. Another 1998 masterpiece.
Yeah, great pick, great album. After that, they kind of lost it for me.
Yeah, they fired their drummer, who I think if I remember the backstory correctly, the drummer was kind of the main guy of the band for the first album, and the other guys did not like the direction of the first album, so they fired him, but they still made him play on the second album because they couldn't find anybody else. And then
awkward.
Well, and he's a badass. I mean, I'm not surprised they couldn't find anybody else. The drum, like I said, the drums on Completely Dehumanized are wicked. Then but he's not even credited. Like, I don't think his name is even on the record. And then they fully fired him and replaced him with a drum machine and made the third album, Blasterpiece Theater, which wasn't as didn't hit the same nerves.
Not as focused.
And so, I mean, it's a strange discography. All three albums are really completely different. But to me, Completely Dehumanized is like, it's in a class by itself. Not just in their catalog, but really in the entire North American black metal history. Really, never came out on vinyl.
Really.
CD only. It hasn't been reissued. It's on Earache, and they're kind of cunty about stuff, so it would probably take an enterprising bootlegger to make it happen. And it's a fairly cult obscure thing, I think, and always will be. So not holding my breath, but
great pick.
Thanks.
Yeah, Earache will turn it into a jigsaw puzzle before they'll put out a decent reissue of it.
Right.
Yeah, or they won't even remember they have it in their catalog until somebody somebody does maybe think about bootlegging it, and then they'll be banging on the door with a summons.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Up next, I don't think anyone has mentioned this in the chat tonight, or so. I apologize, but I have missed the comment. Symphony X, album number 3, Twilight in Olympus. Great U.S. power metal, traditional metal act. And once again, really coming into their own on this album. I like the one before it mostly. Divine Wings of Tragedy has some really great songs on it. Somehow, though, the album always felt like it was maybe, I don't know if it's the track sequence or the length. Parts of it just never clicked, but it has some standout moments. It's the one I started with. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good, so I definitely wanted to follow up. And yeah, I had to get this as an import. Yeah, wasn't easily available, even though it's a US band. And this is still probably my favorite album in their catalog. Symphony X is a band I check in on from time to time. They have a really loyal fan base, very talented guys. Russell Allen's worked on lots of projects.
Great singer.
Mike Romero's, a total badass guitar shred kind of guy. They're just the kind of band that, I'll play the albums, a couple of times, and then I've kind of had enough Symphony X for a little bit, so pack them away, move on to other things. So there's still at least one or two albums I'm sure I probably haven't even heard yet. But Twilight in Olympus for me just really works well. Great set of songs. Yeah, they all are clicking and firing here at this point. It doesn't feel like any missteps. And compared to the albums after it, this one just is a little more satisfying to me. There's nothing wrong with the next couple of albums, but they start to at times feel a bit long-winded, whereas this one doesn't have that. They also start getting into concept albums. Not that it necessarily tells an entire story, but you get like a 22-minute song doing the Odyssey, which is cool. They do it well, but it's still a 22-minute song to get through. There's the I think it's the fifth album has an Atlantis theme to it. Good album. But sometimes it can feel like it just bogs down a little bit here and there. And I never have that problem with Twilight in Olympus. So this is the one I go back to most often when I want to hear Symphony X. Cool band.
It is.
Nothing more to say on that one. But yeah, just another good example of younger bands making their mark in 1998. We'll pass to Marty.
All right. Back to Finland and the third album by Unholy, Rapture. This album is Second Ring of Power is probably my favorite album by this band. Very strange, twisted, blackish doom type stuff. Here, it's more gothic infused, which the inclusion of her name was Vera Mulin. She's got a very I don't want to say Dead Can Dance-ish vocalist style, Lisa Gerard, but she's in that realm. She's not as talented as Lisa is, but it fits there's like a dreamlike quality to this. The songs all just kind of have a plod to them and kind of, I don't want to say it's electronic feeling, but it's real drums and all that stuff. But there's just the way that the songs are presented feels a little bit further removed from metal. And still, you've got the rough black metalish kind of moaned vocal style throughout this. And I don't know, it always worked for me. It isn't, a world rockin' album. There's no air guitaring going on here. It's just kind of one of those mood pieces that you put on. A good compliment to the Suicide record, really. More gothic than depressive, but still good stuff. And it felt a bit different. It was a good palate cleanser from all the other stuff I was partaking in during this year. Chris?
Like you said, Alan, a lot of the U.S. and the Florida death metal scene was pretty dormant, or had kind of peaked, and kind of maybe been eclipsed by things going on overseas or other places. But I always liked this album. This is a Obituaries live album from '98.
Oh, okay.
It didn't get a lot of notice, I think, when it was released. It's a very no frills kind of package, as you would probably expect from a very no frills death metal band, Obituary. But also, as you would expect, it sounds really good. It sounds really kick ass. The guitars are super crisp, and obviously the drums as well, the vocals, and some people like live albums, some people don't. I've always been one to go for a well mixed live album. kind of as a substitute for a greatest hits, because often bands are playing, you know, what the crowd what the crowd wants to hear, often biased towards whatever their most recent release was. And this does have tracks from what was the album Back from the Dead, I think was kind of they made a kind of underwhelming album after The End Complete. And this
World Demise
World
was
Demise.
in there. World Demise.
Oh, so one more after that. Is it Back from the Dead?
That sounds familiar.
Like a hip hop track on it. It kind of fell flat.
Yeah.
But then this album, that album's represented here, and kind of their entire catalog up to when this came out. So as live albums functioning as kind of a greatest hits, this one does a good job of that. And I've always kept it on the shelf. I think I'm definitely not an obituary completist. I think I have the first two albums and this, and that's good for me. This is the one I reach for the most often. It's kick-ass. And as far as other Florida death metal, I think Gallery of Suicide is 1998.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if Deicide had an album. Deicide is another band that has a good good sounding live record. I can't think what it's called, but I keep that
Deicide Lives or something lives.
When Satan Lives.
When Satan Lives, that's it.
Yeah. So that it's maybe in some ways a companion piece to the obituary one. Just captures the band on a good night. I'm sure it's been touched up in the studio to some degree, and I don't have any objection to that. I'm listening to it at home. Fix those fuck ups. Fine with me.
Right on. Fix them. I agree. Can you imagine some of the biggest, like Frampton Comes Alive? They said the only thing they used out of that whole performance was like a kick drum or a bass line or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Often it's the drums.
Yeah.
And everything else is pretty well touched up.
Retracked.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Ellen.
All right. This one's been mentioned in the chat. I'm a little surprised we haven't gotten to it until now, but well, here we are. Death metal band, not from Florida. They definitely had a Floridian sound on their first couple of albums. Not on this album. They went in a different direction, and it became a blueprint for a lot of what death metal would do after, or would try to do, because it's not easy to pull off. It is Gorguts Obscura. It's become one of those just sort of touchstone releases as a very difficult thing to make it through. It's a crazy sound. They're really going over the top here. And again, the first two albums have, had a following. They didn't get as much attention maybe as they deserved on that first pass with Erosion and Condemned. But
sounded very Floridian.
Yeah, they did sound Floridian. That was part of the problem. Probably they were already getting a little bit lost in the whole churn of Roadrunner bands,
especially being on the same label with all of it.
Yep.
Same label, same dancey. There's a interview with Luc Lemay, and he's like, literally talking to Monty, and says like, we got the Roadrunner special deal. Who's doing the cover art? Dan Seagrave. Right. Where did we produce? You got $5,000 for a week in Morristown with Scott Burns. Okay, then we'll do that. But with when they come back a few years later on Obscura, you've got new guys involved, and it's just a harrowing listen in the best possible way. For a lot of folks, it is a little bit too much, over the top. They reined it back in after that album some to very good effect on releases that would come later, like From Wisdom to Hate. I always liked Obscura, and for whatever reason, it was an album that clicked with me very quickly when it came out, and it really shouldn't have. Late 90s, death metal was not something I was interested in keeping up with. I just heard people talking about it being this, really crazy out there kind of album, and so I got him to throw it in on a cassette trade and played it, and was just like, okay, that is really different, but I kind of like it. So, stuck with it. The last song is, people always talk like the album is too long. I don't know if the album's too long. It's just that the last song is particularly long. If you take that last song off, the whole thing becomes a lot more manageable. It's not like the last song is bad, but it does go on for a bit, and so it does add a chunk to the runtime of the album. But yeah, Obscura, and again, at the time, it left a lot of people just kind of scratching their heads. To this day, it leaves a lot of people scratching their heads, but it informed a new generation of death metal bands that there was something different you could do, that you didn't have to stick to the Floridian sound or the New York sound or the Swedish sound, which, as we've talked about, a lot of those things had kind of fallen out of vogue by 98. And here was a band from Canada that had their roots in that scene, but pointing out that we don't have to keep doing that. We can do something different, and you can too. And you've heard it in some of the more influential death metal bands of the 21st century. You can trace lines from things like Ulcerate right back to, sorry, this Digipack thing is weird. But yeah, I think you can trace a line from things like Ulcerate right back to Obscura. It's been a very impactful album, even if it is a very hard nut for a lot of people to crack.
Right. Good one. Actually, I was going to pick that, and I said, nope, I think Alan's going to get that one. I'll let him.
Yep. I left a lot of things off because I knew you had things like Halloween and Incantation and Eternus covered tonight. So yeah, we kind of know how not to step on each other's toes.
Yeah, we sharing the same brain after all these years of doing it. Sorry for you. Anyway, Maiden put out a shit record in 1998, but Bruce Dickinson put out a good Maiden record that wasn't Iron Maiden. The Chemical Wedding. The Accident of Birth that came before this one is also a pretty good record as well. A little bit long for me, but you got Adrian Smith from Maiden fame in the band with Bruce, and there's a lot of Maidenisms on this. The Tower, I think it's called. Yep. Definitely a Maiden feel in the bass work and all that. Not maybe as good of a bass player as Steve Harris, but has the same spirit. But you got this Roy Z on the second guitar, and there's a little bit of a modernization. Some of the songs are a little heavier, a little more down-tuned. It works here. And, Bruce sounds like Bruce. And I enjoyed it when I heard it first, and I still like this. My kid is into this stuff now, so it's cool to hear the sounds coming through the house still. And it's good to hear that Maiden was represented. It wasn't long after this record that Blaze was on his way and Bruce was making plans for a comeback with Brave New World. So what did you guys think of Chemical Wedding at the time?
I liked it quite a bit.
Liked it at the time. Has not aged well for me.
Right on.
I do not go back and play it very often. So for whatever reason, same is true of Accident of Birth and Tyranny of Souls. Liked them a lot in those years, but they have just collected dust. I probably don't even have physical copies of them at this point. I have them on the hard drive, but I never dial them up.
I haven't spun them by choice. Like I said, my kids spin it. When I hear it, I'm like, it's good. I'm happy. So.
Yep. Yeah, I spent it wasn't that one, but yeah, Accident of Birth got played a lot while prepping dinosaur bones in the lab when we pull them out of the desert. Go back, clean them up for a couple of weeks, and Accident of Birth was one of the go-to albums around then.
Right on.
That's wild.
All right, we have a couple more rounds in us here before the witching hour.
I have two more in my stack.
Right on.
Two more sounds pretty good to me.
Niflheim, album number 2.
Yep.
Devil's Force. Didn't totally click with me yet. It was the next album, Servants of Darkness, when I completely got into Niflheim and stayed there. And then it was one of those situations where once I kind of passed through the gates, I could go back and listen to Devil's Force and listen to the first album and enjoy them quite a bit. And I don't remember like slagging it off. It just kind of didn't click with me because the image was so over the top and ridiculous. It was hard to experience the music with the same kind of intensity because the production wasn't quite as good as they achieved on the next two albums. It's really cavernous kind of mix. The toms are kind of like awkwardly loud. And I found that kind of hard to get past at the time, I guess. But like I said, once I listened to the third album, I could kind of go back and it all kind of came into focus and made sense for me. Love them, killer band. I am sad that they've kind of fallen apart the way they have, but I don't know if you guys saw Sweden Rock magazine recently. Well, so Niflheim fell apart. It's two twin brothers.
Yep.
Who
Iron Maiden twins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
These two guys.
Mm-hmm.
Who almost kind of became famous in their little village that they're from, as these crazy rocker twin brothers who had just like completely fanatical Maiden collections, not just of records and CDs, but of shirts, and they follow them on tour. The band, I think, became popular in its own right, certainly around the time of Devil's Force and the third album, Servants of Darkness. But I think they were kind of equally known for their just over the top Maiden worship. More recently, a few years ago, I don't know the details, but they kind of reached an impasse over how to continue Niflheim, like what Niflheim should be, the types of gigs that they should be doing, like whether to make a new album. They just had some pretty core disagreements over the future of the band, and it ended up with the band being broken up and them actually personally becoming estranged.
Oh, that sucks.
It does. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot more to the story and to the history that's between them, obviously. But just a few weeks ago, I saw that Sweden Rock magazine did a kind of a stunt where they had Steve Harris come try to make peace with the brothers.
Really?
They actually got the three of them together in person, and I don't know what the outcome was, but apparently it was the first time the brothers had kind of been in the room together for a while. And there was Steve Harris trying to get them to at least begin some kind of reconciliation.
Did they?
I don't know.
Did
Like
somebody
I said,
drive them to Steve's house, and did he play them songs from Virtual 11 to kind of bedazzle them?
Break the ice.
That's what he should have done, and then let them interview Blaze Bayley afterward.
He could have warned him, was like, "Get back together, or you'll end up like me."
No, they'd probably knock you for saying that though, because they are equally. They love X Factor. They love.
That's cool if they do.
The Chemical Wedding, like anything with the smallest that's the smallest part of the Maiden discography or story, or
that's great.
They're tuned into and knowledgeable of. I mean, they're really
true fans.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's before we even say anything about Niflheim, which had the privilege to see them live once, and it was amazing. It was one of the best live sets I've ever seen. It was just super intense. They were the headliner. They came out and played for 40 minutes and then literally told the audience to fuck off, and that was the end of the show. And it was awesome. It was awesome. And it's too bad it's ended the way it has, and I hope that they can at least repair their relationship, because life's too short. I think pretty much anything can be gotten over, but that's not for me to That's not for me to say.
People told me that Hell Butcher record is good, but I have never gotten around to checking it out. I'm assuming it's very Niflheim-y. So
it's good. I mean, it's got that over the top image and persona that I wasn't quite on board with at the time of Devil's Force, but having seen that only escalate, like, I understand how it fits in now, and I understand why it's a necessary part of what Niflheim does and what Hell Butcher does too. I mean, that Hell Butcher has definitely continued the image, the appearance, the presentation, let's say.
Yeah. Wow, that's a cool side story too. I did not know that. I didn't know they were estranged. I knew
I
they,
meant to, yeah, and I meant to. It was a couple weeks ago that I saw like a picture of Steve standing with the brothers, and they both looked a little bit like
what the fuck?
a little bit like equally like starstruck and a little bit stunned and awkward too. But whoever's idea that was, my hat's off to them, and even just as like a publicity stunt or reality show kind of moment or whatever you want to call it.
There's some good behind it though. I mean,
Totally, yeah, very well intentioned.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I hope whatever if it, I hope it maybe got a toe through the door for them to mend their fences, but who knows?
Right on.
Yeah.
All right, Alan.
Marty, if you and I have a falling out, Chris can hire Michael Kiska to try to have us on some kind of live stream.
Tenderly cradle both of our nut sacks and sing to us. Yes.
All right, let's see. So we got maybe 2 rounds left. This one's come up multiple times. Definitely needs to be talked about. As we've said, death metal was in a weird place in '98, but there was one album that came out that did make a pretty big splash. And so it deserves a moment here. That was the debut from Nile, Amongst the Catacombs of Nephrom Ka. Not something I got into at the time, but I have come around to the band here in like the past 6 or so years. Yeah, like we said, death metal just had kind of burned itself out a bit by '98. And in hindsight, it makes sense. That would be, a newer band like this that would start to pick up the ball and move it forward a little bit more. This is early Nile. They, of course, went through some lineup changes and refined their sound with time, got, tighter, more technical, all of that. But they pushed the envelope here and always found a good balance between being brutal and technical. And that's why I've come around and now enjoy a big chunk of their catalog. They really can lean into the brutality direction, which is why I didn't like them much at first. But paying more attention to it, they also have, a really solid, technical foundation. Carl's a really good songwriter, obviously a very good musician. And they found a gimmick that actually works well. The whole Egyptian thing, they never turned it into something cheesy. They never wandered onto stage wearing, cardboard pyramid shaped hats or some bullshit. And Carl is basically sort of, an amateur archaeologist, Egyptologist. He leaned into his other passion and drew on that heavily for source material, treated the subject with respect. And it absolutely works. It gives the music a certain kind of grandeur that a lot of death metal doesn't always achieve, without losing any of the just dark, sick, twisted, fucked up shit that does work in death metal. Because Egyptians did a lot of really messed up shit, and all those old scrolls and things are perfect material. It's just a different lens to channel zombies, mummies, gore, pulling guts out of mummies, and feeding into all these weird ass demons in the underworld and stuff. It absolutely lines up well. The Nile album made a big splash. The band obviously has gone into a great career and is still putting out fantastic stuff. So '98 is where Nile was like, okay, everyone else is kind of on the sidelines or whatever. We'll take that ball and we'll run with it. And I'm glad they did.
Yeah. Okay. Norway. Black Shining Leather. Carpathian Forest.
Ooh, nice one.
This one here is, I think Nana Frost was kind of the guy that brought the Motorhead rock vibe, black metal vibe to the band. And the other guy at the time, what was his name? Nordavind, I believe. He brought the more atmospheric, straight up Norwegian black metal vibe to the band. And it really congeals very well on this record.
Mm-hmm.
I like both sides of the sound here really well. It's a good mix. As Nordavind moved on to other things, Carpathian Forest became more rock and rolly. Strange Old Brew,
Yeah.
very much a punky rock type of
The
black
punk
metal.
side kind of
Yeah.
started to take over a little bit, but it still worked pretty
Yeah,
well.
totally works. And this one here is the last of the true Norwegian vibe that I liked of their stuff. I still followed them a bit afterwards. Good stuff here, good stuff there, but really it all boils down to coming back to this one. Their debut full length. I think this is the debut.
Yeah, it is.
But
there's an EP before that and a bunch of demo stuff.
Yep, through Chasm
Chasm
Caves
Cave
and Titan Woods.
Titan Woods.
Yeah.
And Bloodlust and Perversion.
Bloodlust for
demo
Perversion,
collection you usually see. Yeah.
But if you've never heard Carpathian Forest, this is a good place to start. Black Shining Leather. It's got a little bit of rock. It's got a little bit of good atmospheric black metal from the 90s.
Yeah, they had their own sound there.
Yeah. All right. Chris, last round.
Last one.
I think I know what it is.
Yep.
Yeah, there it is.
Did you? Yeah, okay, yeah. Inishmore by Riot. Music teacher metal. The musicianship on that album I would put up against, certainly up against, not that it's a contest, your Symphony X's. I don't know that it achieves the Dream Theater level, at least in the way it's presented, because what Riot is writing is basically ass-kicking hard rock songs in the Rainbow or MSG kind of realm. But in terms of the amount of musical ability and firepower on this album, you have Bobby Jarzambek on drums, who is
Beast.
one of the greatest living, certainly rock drummers, if not drummers of any modality.
And his brother is a wackadoo guitar player too. Totally amazing.
Completely insane.
Yeah.
Talented family.
Yep.
Bass player is Pete Perez. I think he was on one more Riot album after this. Again, just a total motherfucker on the bass. A lot of movement under what the guitars are doing. Definitely not a conservative bass player, but also he's not seeking the spotlight. It's a bit like Marcus from Halloween, that he's kind of just swimming along, but there's also a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Once you kind of let your ear zero into to what he's doing, there's a lot of detail in his playing. And the guitar duo, two of my favorites, one of my favorite guitar duos of all time, I should say, Mike Flint's and Mark Reale, complement each other perfectly. Very similar melodic touch, but Flint's executes much more like an Eddie Van Halen, super clean picking technique. Mark Reale has a little more of a rough edge to his execution, a little more vibrato in his lead playing, I would say. But they blend perfectly. They blend seamlessly. Some of the like really fast harmony parts that they do on this album are just super impressive. And to know that they do it in real time live also is amazing. Singer Mike DeMeo, not everybody's favorite Riot singer. Definitely more of like the bluesy kind of hard rock Joe Lynn Turner style voice. I think Joe Lynn Turner is probably one of his bigger vocal influences. Definitely a different persona compared to the Thundersteel era Tony Moore style of singing. The guy they have now, Todd Hall, is much closer to Tony Moore as well. Mike DeMeo, I would say, resembles the singer prior to Tony Moore, who was Rhett Forrester. Just a bit of a smoother voice. Mike DeMeo doesn't have that smoky quality to his voice that Rhett had, but definitely has that bluesy kind of. Again, I want to say meat and potatoes. It's kind of a cliche, but just like a very, just kind of a normal voice, right? Like an almost just like a bar rock band singer, style singer. Love the album. In the liner notes, for the vinyl reissue that I have, which were written by Mike Flintz, the guitar player. He said he believes that Mark Real has 3 masterpiece albums with Riot. The first being Fire Down Under, second Thundersteel, and third this one, Inishmore. And I agree. It's definitely where his Thin Lizzy influences may have really come bursting out, and the fact that they did when he had the firepower that he did in terms of the other musicians in the band, especially the rhythm section. It's just it's kind of magical. Really impressive. I hear new things every time I listen to this album, and I've probably heard it. Like Marty was saying, I don't know if when your kids get a hold of albums, if they just play them over and over and over and over.
Oh yeah,
multiple times a day.
Yeah.
My kids got a hold of this one a few years ago, and like I had already listened to it 100,000 times myself, and then they only like increased the plays on this, and I'm surprised this actual physical CD still plays because it's beat to shit, but it's hanging in there.
Hang in there, yeah.
That's my last pick for 98.
All right.
Great one.
Good one.
Yeah, that was the album that kind of really helped the band kind of bounce back and get some attention for a few releases. But yeah, that whole era of Riot, I love. I know a lot of folks are a little down on Mike DeMeo. I love his voice. I think he's perfect.
I liked all that. I thought it was all really good. I even like the Riot 5 stuff a lot too. I know Mark's not in the band anymore, obviously, but
nope,
shit's really well done. Rips.
It works.
Good heavy metal.
It works. Yep. All right, I want to burn through just a handful of things here. So some last minute honorable mentions. This one's been mentioned in the chat a couple of times and deserves a shout out. Jagdpanzer's The Age of Mastery. This is their second album when they came back around the turn of the century. And the one before this, Fourth Judgment, is good. This one I think is better. This was one that really said like, okay, this is going to work. And this wasn't just a fluke on the last one. They're really locked in now. Love that one. Virgin Steel, Invictus, one of the great overlooked U.S. heavy metal albums of the 1990s. Virgin Steel couldn't have gotten a free cup of coffee in their own hometown in the 90s. They just have never caught on here. They've got a good following in other places. They made some amazing records in the 1990s, and Invictus is, if for my money, their crowning achievement. I know some people prefer Heaven and Hell Part 2, also good, but Invictus just has a certain fire to it that they often didn't quite capture on some of their other albums. Very Manowar-ish.
I was going to say that thing. I listen to that thing. I hear nothing but Manowar.
It's Manowar, but
fine.
It's Manowar through DeFay's more classically influenced kind of lens. A great album and band folks don't talk about. Italy's Labyrinth.
I keep meaning to check that shit out. And I used to have that promo, and I got rid of it when I didn't like power metal, and now I hate myself. Anyway,
good singer.
Very good singer, yes. Return to Heaven Denied. This is their second album, and they got picked up and distributed by Metal Blade. So again, this was power metal was definitely spreading a bit. That Blind Guardian album you showed earlier, Chris, had a lot to do with that around this time. So fantastic record here. It's very Italian sounding, but not. So, I mean, you listen to this, you can hear that, yes, they're country mates with somebody like Rhapsody, but Labyrinth didn't go into the whole medieval Dungeons and Dragons, let us sing about or made up role-playing stuff.
Neoclassical?
Well, it's just that, they didn't play those fantasy elements in the lyrics so much. That Labyrinth would draw more on maybe like historical references or just, a general, more emotive songwriting rather than I'm riding a dragon with a +9 ogre killing sword. Yay me! They just never had that vibe, and I appreciated that about them. They had some ups and downs after that album, but that one, the first album's great. That album's better. Ed Guy was on album number 3 with Vainglory Opera, great German power metal of the time. This is before the project started to get kind of goofy, a little too goofy sometimes for their own good. Long before, Avantasia wasn't a gleam in his eye just yet. For me, this is them where, this band really all of a sudden comes into focus. The first two show some promise, but they also are kind of underdeveloped. But here, all of a sudden, you get a very, very good album. It's a little heavy still on some of the keys and synths, maybe a strong Europe influence, perhaps. It's not bad. It works, but it might be a little bit of a turnoff for some folks. It's not on my stack, but it could have gone with the Jagdpanzer and the Virgin Steel. Iced Earth had Something Wicked This Way Comes. That one's worth mentioning. They had broken through on the previous album, The Dark Saga, and Something Wicked's a very good album. Just forgot to pull it off the shelf.
The Dark Saga, man, the record label rammed that down everybody's throat. It was everywhere, every magazine, every interview, every phone call.
It
was a thing.
And to this day, I don't really care for that album. That was the album where I kind of started parting ways with Iced Earth. I still checked in later, and Something Wicked I liked it more, but yeah, Dark Saga just doesn't work for me. At last, this one's worth mentioning, Nightwish, Oceanborn. Some folks were talking about it earlier. I promised I'd get it in here. Nightwish, in hindsight, they did form this little different branch of power metal that, focused on, the pretty female vocals, the more operatic kind of style. But it also comes at the cost of overwhelming the music quite a bit. You get a lot of keyboard and synth layers. Your guitar and bass don't have as much to do on albums in this style. But Nightwish had great success with it. This is album number 2 for them. One of their best albums. It's definitely the one where they go for like the most kind of classical operatic bombast in the music. They dial it back a little bit on the albums after this, but still to good effect. I like the Tarja Turunen albums with Nightwish. The stuff after is pretty mediocre. They've had some good vocalists, not taking anything away from them. I just don't think the band's got anything creatively worth offering in terms of songwriting anymore. But Oceanborn is one of their highlights. And again, it's whether you like them or not, they've spawned an entire side branch of power metal, and I think you can even trace the roots of a lot of stuff like the modern wave of Angus McSix and Windrose and those bands back to the success of Nightwish, kind of catering to a slightly different audience, structuring your songs in a different way, and it's a formula that obviously has a big fan base. It's not always for me, but it has worked for a lot of those bands very well. I will call it there, and Marty, let you run through whatever you want to wrap it up with.
But the Anguses and the Glory Hammers, of that whole side of it, it appeals to the Jar Jar loving fans of the trilogy, as opposed to.
I think this sound like doo-doo.
Yeah. All right, let's do a quick run here of a few things. Inhale, Exhale, Nazem, my favorite record by them. Really well produced, very heavy grind record from Sweden. Not much to say, really. This is, it's kind of funny. We're starting to see a lot of relapse releases still here in the bunch. This is before. You don't really see that as much these days. But anyway, excellently produced grind. When I want grind, I'm grabbing either a Suck, I'm grabbing World Downfall by Terrorizer, a Phobia record, or this one. I'm not the world's biggest grind fan, but definitely that album, it's crushing. It's kind of death metal centric a bit, but speaking of death metal, let's go to Angel Corpse Exterminate. Absolutely crushing killer band. Awesome live. They're just a force to be reckoned with live. But, Morbid Angelisms for sure in Gene's guitar playing, Pete's voice, just Hellraiser rattling around in the back of his throat. Go the Netherlands, the debut album by Pentacle, Rides the Moonstorm.
Oh, nice. Forgot all about that one.
Crushing European death metal. There's a, little bit of a Asphyx / Celtic Frost vibe in some of these riffs. In fact, Vanus Gubbles ended up singing for Asphyx for an album or two for a while. Then we went back to Pentacle, but yeah, so his voice is definitely Van Drunen-esque, This was before it was cool to do that. Now it seems like so many death metal bands are ripping off the Van Drunen growl, snarl.
If you're going to copy someone, copy one of the best.
Copy the best, yeah. But this is, if you never heard Pentacle, check these guys out. Super killer European death metal. And talk about bands becoming super popular. You got Borknagar, the Archaic Course.
Yep.
You've got Icy Vortex, Seaman Hessness, I think is how you say his name. I don't know. But he takes over the lead vocal duties on here. Fantastic, strange, unique vocal style. I like this better than the Olden Domain for sure. I don't like it as well as the debut. The debut just has the
debut is awesome.
The true Norwegian black metal vibe. And we'll end in Latvia with Kaya Paya Solace by Skyforger. This is their debut full-length album. Always been something about this band that was really good. The production's really good. It's just really nasty, snarled black metal with good folky kind of melodies in it. And the singer's voice at this point was just ripping. Awesome. I think singing in his native language, there's something about the accent just makes the voice sicker. I don't know what it is. I've always liked that touch. And this was a good record. The band kind of lost me. They started doing more kind of hardcore type shouting and chanty, folk type stuff. Some people dig it. Nah, I like the sicker stuff. But that's the pile. Could have been some more, but we're good.
There's always more we could cover, but I think we've done 98 justice.
Yeah. And Chris, let's not make it 4 years again. Let's do something. Well, we got a Bathory book coming out here very soon, hopefully this year. So start listening to your Bathory albums. I'm sure you have been over the past 9 years.
Yeah, I've heard them once or twice each.
Yeah. And anytime you do have an idea for a topic and you just want to geek out on something, let us know. We'll hook it up. We're doing this all the time. So it'd be good to have you on again.
Cool,
for
thank
sure.
you.
Ellen, you have anything going on that you want to talk about before we jump?
Nope, don't believe so. I'll have something posted over on Let's Talk Metal next Tuesday morning, like every other Tuesday morning for the past 4 or 5 years. I'm consistent that way. We shall see. I stumbled into a pile of CDs at a store yesterday, you did. So I we might just do a kind of a quick run through on those. I haven't even played them yet, but I can at least show them off and folks can see what I fed the sick little monkey on my back.
Yeah. Chris, you have anything you want to? Obviously, we went through a bunch of stuff you got going on. Anything else come to mind before we?
I don't think so. I feel like I did plenty of talking. It was good to see you guys and catch up a little, reminisce about 1998. I mean, you do this kind of thing and you realize how much wasn't on your radar at all at the time, and also things that were on your radar at the time that I may have forgotten, like that Borknagar record. I'm sure I listened to that a bunch of times when it came out. Have I listened to it since 1998? I don't know. But maybe I should. So, that's always cool. And just to kind of look back and see what all was happening at the same time. Like the diversity of everything was just kind of real scattered around as the internet was still forming, and fans of these kind of niche sub genres hadn't quite found each other yet to help sustain those genres. Everything was just like really cast around and really uneven in a way. And I think certainly 10 years later, if not even 5 years later, things just were much more consolidated and organized, and moving faster also. So I don't know. It's cool. It's gonna sink in and percolate a little over the weekend, I'm sure. But
right on. Yeah,
the experience.
A lot of fun. We had a good time doing it for sure. It'll be good to see you again soon. And Miss A for sure. Mayhem Sunday. Our friends over there on the Shredbeard channel. Their show starts at 8:00 Eastern. Definitely go over there and check it out. And
they've got Wyatt as their guest.
Exactly, Wyatt XM. And hang out for a second, Chris. And thanks, everybody. This past week, we dropped a review for At the Gates and Corrosion Conformity and Neurosis. Next week, there's stuff coming up as well. Album club is Opeth, My Arms, Your Hearse. Friday, to be determined. So cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining us. A lot of fun. We will see you all next week.